Thank you. Have a roll call for quorum, please.
You've got it. Shepherd.
Here.
Likens.
Here.
Portfolio.
Here.
Oxley is absent. Maloney.
Here.
Pinn.
Here.
Wheeler. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the February meeting. Have a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Any questions or discussions on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearings. There's two cases up tonight for public hearings, for the Clover Ridge Estates and for Oak Creek subdivisions. There are also 5 items for review by the commission that are not set for public hearing, but nonetheless, we will follow the following procedure so that the meeting can be conducted in an orderly manner. The city staff will outline the application and staff's recommendation. The petitioner will have an opportunity to present any further testimony, evidence, or other materials for its application. Anyone who wants to provide testimony in support or against the application will be allowed the opportunity to make his or each statements, and each speaker will be limited to 5 minutes. Anyone who plans to testify either in support or opposition to the petitioner's request will be administered an oath when they come up to the podium. Any questions to be directed to the petitioner, and please not direct questions to the commissioners and staff unless the questions are about the hearing process. This is not an opportunity to have a dialogue with the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Each case will be called at one time, one at a time, and after the presentation, statements, and questions, we will close the hearing for deliberation. The purpose of this meeting is to conduct the city's business. This is an open meeting. The public has a right to be here. But yes, that everyone please be respectful of each person who is speaking in order to keep civil decorum. Please do not interrupt, heckle, cheer, clap, or do anything to disrupt the meeting. We would like to work through the agenda here in an orderly fashion.
And if I could point out, Chairman Maloney, Pro Tem Chairman Maloney, due to the fact that there are many people who are here to speak, and it may be for 1 or 2 topics, that the note of caution should be made that if someone is repeating the same thing over and over and over again by the same speakers over and over again, this chairman has the discretion to state that it's been that same position has been stated by the previous speaker, and so therefore, if someone could maybe get a spokesperson who would speak on that topic, that would actually make the meeting more efficient. Otherwise, we will be here pretty late, and that will prohibit the conduct of the other businesses before this commission. So any members who are, citizens who are out here, if it's becoming repetitive, the chairman has authority to say that that's been stated before, and the next person, if they have a different position, can come up and make that statement.
Thank you. Staff, first case is 2019-014 for Clover Ridge.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the Commission. The first case before you this evening is case number 2019-014. The applicant, Andrea Crowley, on behalf of A&J Construction, Inc., is seeking approval of special use permit for a planned residential development to allow a 44-unit townhome development. The request includes amendment to preliminary development plan and preliminary subdivision plat, and final development plan and final subdivision plat. Clover Ridge Estates is a PUD that was approved in 1995. It is comprised of 3 units or phases. Phase 1 and 2 have been completed, with phase 3 being the final phase and never built. In 2006, a second developer was granted approval for a 60-unit townhome development consisting of 15 4-unit buildings. This is displayed on the monitors. The property would again remain vacant due to economic conditions. In 2019, the applicant submitted plans for the proposed 44-unit townhome development. Due to the number of amendments, the use will require a new PUD. The proposed development consists of substantially similar layout to the 2006 plan, which was reduced density from 60 units to 44 units, with 2 and 3 unit buildings instead of 4 unit buildings. A final site plan was submitted and is displayed. The townhome development will be located east of Clover Ridge Drive and is designed in a rectangular-like fashion around Lacoma Court, which is a dedicated road. The plan depicts 16 2-unit buildings and 4 3-unit buildings. Although there is a reduction in the number of units proposed, the change in product to ranches lends to larger footprints. The original layout was designed with one large common lot and condominium ownership, whereas the homeowners of the proposed community will own a portion of their lot. The newly created individual lots will result in a total of 6 deviations that are displayed. Final elevations were submitted and are in conformance with the design guidelines and show exemplary architecture is exhibited. The use of masonry, such as stone and brick, are used in combination with hardy board siding. Elevations illustrate a hip-style roof with dormers and gabled ends located above the garage. Casement windows are illustrated with decorative overhangs. An upgraded rear elevation, which is displayed at the corner of the monitor, is provided for both the 2-unit and 3-unit, showing an optional raised 12-foot ceiling at family room. Elevations show covered patios and decks with walkouts or lookouts. The extended portions of the elevation consist of brick on the sides and rear. A final landscape was submitted and is displayed on the monitor. It is compliant with the city code. The plan shows a 15-foot landscape buffer along the south property boundary where the townhomes will abut single-family detached homes. Typical plantings demonstrate the appropriate foundation landscaping is provided for each unit. A photometric lighting plan was included with this submittal and is in conformance with the development plan, the development code. The final engineering plans have been reviewed by the city's development engineering consultant, and the latest memo identifies that the engineering comments have been addressed. Fire district and building official have also reviewed the plans and also have no comments at this time. A special use permit shall be granted only if evidence is presented to establish that the use meets standards as identified in section 156.122 of the City of Lockport zoning ordinance. Staff finds that the proposed development meets the standards with exemplary architectural design, its consistent character and context of the surrounding homes, and proximity to open space. Staff finds that the proposed development is similar to what was originally proposed, with a decrease in density from 60 units to 44 units, and shall not have a substantial adverse effect upon adjacent property. Additionally, the landscape buffer proposed where the 2-unit townhomes abut single-family townhomes to the south will provide adequate buffer. Lastly, staff finds the 4-unit buildings allowable by right within the R2 district. The proposed development is designed in accordance with the limitations of the R2 single-family zoning district. Should the commission find that evidence was presented to establish that the proposed special use will comply with the standards contained in section 156.122 of the city code for the special use permit for a planned residential development and finds the request acceptable, the following motion is suggested. A motion to approve special use permit for a planned residential development, amendment to preliminary development plan and subdivision plat, and amendment to final development plan and subdivision plat for Clover Ridge Estates Unit 3, subject to the following conditions. 1, prior to construction, a financial guarantee for public and private site improvements in accordance with the city's development code shall be submitted to the Director of Public Works and Engineering. 2, prior to construction, the required engineering inspection fees in accordance with the city's development code shall be submitted to the Director of Public Works and Engineering. And lastly, prior to construction, for any necessary governmental agency permits acquired, City of Lockport shall be copied on correspondence. This concludes staff analysis. The applicant is present this evening with representation and design team.
And Chairman Pro Tem, just before the applicant comes up, if I could ask for a motion to open up the public hearing?
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
The motion is second to open the public hearing. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Public hearing is now open. If the applicant will step up and make your comments.
And for the public hearing and the hearing for any other matters, if any of the applicants or any objectors or supporters come up, they need to be sworn in. And if I could have I believe for the record, Ms. Crowley, right?
That's correct.
Is it true?
Crowley?
Yes, okay.
C-R-O-W-L-E-Y.
And Ms. Crowley, if I could ask you to raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. My name is Andrea Crowley from the law firm of Griffin & Gallagher. I'm here on behalf of A&J Construction, who is here, along with our engineer, Kevin Chafin from KDC Consultants. Our landscape architect is here as well, John Shiro. We first want to thank the staff. I think they did a great job, and we're really happy with the product we brought here tonight. It's similar to what was approved prior. 2006, I think, was the last time there was an approval on this piece, but we did reduce the density and I think bring a better product to the site because of that reduction, and we have some better open space and some really, I think, a good-looking product. We're happy with the staff report. I think that they were very thorough. They certainly addressed everything. We think that we've, met what they've asked of us, and so we're here to answer questions more than anything. I think that they did a fantastic job presenting our project. So if there's questions, we're here for that. Otherwise, I think that what was presented was great, and we're happy with that presentation. So there's very little to add.
Okay, thank you. If you'll just step aside, and we'll let the public speak, and then you can respond afterward. Mr. Kavanaugh, you had a card for this? For Clover Ridge?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Want me to swear me in or not? Richard, last name Kavanaugh, K-A-V-A-N-A-G-H. I'm an attorney with offices at 111 North Ottawa Street in Joliet. I do. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'm here representing two of the property owners who live on St. Charles Street, which is at the south end of this proposed development. I think we all recognize that this is something that could have gone forward in 2006, didn't. It's been approved in the past, and quite frankly, in looking at it, I don't have substantial objections to it. There are a couple of things, though, that I would like to point out. The first is that the applicant has requested, and staff is recommending, a variance in the rear yard setback from 30 feet to 18 feet for the property along the south property line. 18 feet brings that residence, the new residences, well within any reasonable boundary of the property owners to the south. When I looked at it in more detail, though, it seemed to me that the reason for that variance was the fact that they have either a covered porch or a patio at the rear of the building. And if that's the case, and if the buildings are going to continue to be 30 feet setback from the property line, then I think the variance should read a variance to 18 feet for the specific purpose of putting in a patio or a covered porch, and for no other purpose. In other words, I wouldn't like to see somebody put a 30 or 40 foot long covered porch across the backyard. I certainly wouldn't like to see the building built all the way back to the 18-foot rear yard setback, without a patio or a covered porch. So I think the variance should be specified to say it is only for the specific purpose of the size of either patio or covered porch that would be in the approved plans. That's one thing. The other thing is a concern about drainage. I was out at my client's property yesterday. Part of it slopes, part of the property to be developed slopes back toward my client's property, but really, most of the water should be going directly west. And I understand that there's going to be grading and fill on the site. There is a huge lower area behind my client's house, and then the high point on this property is around the middle, but a little bit north of where Lacoma Court, the south end of Lacoma Court would be. I assume that everything is going to be balanced, and in looking at the plans, it shows that they are running the water from the southeast end of the property along the back property lines directly west to a storm sewer at the southwest corner. And if that goes in, that's fine, because that will prevent runoff from this development to the existing homes to the south. So I do hope that that is carefully monitored. The final thing is the plantings that are going to go along the south property line to help shield the homes that are on St. Charles there from, number one, the construction, obviously, but number two, the new homes that are going in. And I'm hoping that there is going to be a lot of vegetation, including fir trees and other trees that will at least afford some visual barrier between the patios and the covered porches that again are 18 feet away from the property line, and these homes that exist on the north side of St. Charles at the south property line. Those are the points that I'd like to make. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Is there
Thank you
anyone
very
else who would like to speak on this Clover Ridge proposal? Okay,
That would give the opportunity of the petitioner to answer those questions.
Okay. I can address the setback line on the south end there, the rear setback. Mr. Kavanaugh is correct in that the biggest portion of the variance that's being sought there is 4 decks and patios off the back of those houses. The building line that we would need for the actual building is 28 feet. So if the commission sees fit to alter the variance so that it allows for a deck or a patio, I think that's something we can live with. We do need a 28-foot building line, though, not 30. So, and if you do amend it, it's not 30 feet that the building's actually reached to, it's a 28 feet. But if you see fit to amend so that the encroachment beyond 28 feet is only for a patio or a covered deck or something like that, that's acceptable to the petitioner. In terms of the engineering, Kevin from KDC, Kevin Chafin is here, and he can talk about the drainage better. Is there that cover the rear yard setback issue? Are we? The landscape architect, John Shearer, is here as well, so he'll have to answer these.
Want to swear us both in at first?
State your name and spell your last name.
Kevin Chaffin, Chaffin.
And,
John Shira, Schieira.
and if you could both raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Okay, thank you. Good evening. So, yes, we've looked pretty hard along that south property line at the drainage, and we've worked with staff and stuff like that. So while this site was originally designed for a portion of the water to be directed that way, it's not really working that well out in the field. So what we've done is we've oversized the storm sewers to direct the water towards the west out onto Clover Ridge. And we've also created a berm along that south property line so that any excess water is going to fill up and head out to the street as opposed to going toward the south. So we've pretty much just, we've blocked the water from going to the south.
Okay, thank you.
In regards to the questioning on the planting along the south property line, there's a row of what are called Techni arborvitae, which are about 12 to 15 foot tall, narrow, upright growing evergreens. So that should be more than tall enough to screen those buildings out from the neighbors to the south. And interspersed in there, we put some shade trees in about, averaging about 2 every unit along there. So therefore, in the summertime, when they leaf out and the people are enjoying their backyards, there's going to be any sound or vegetation, additional vegetation will block any sound of the building sight lines also. But it stretches across the whole entire back south property line of this development.
Okay, thank you. Close the public.
There's no other person for comments on this. I would suggest a motion to close the public hearing and for
Thank you.
deliberation.
This time I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Motion, second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The public hearing is now closed. Comments or concerns? Mr. Porfilio?
Couple questions. The side yard easements for drainage and utilities, they're only 5 feet. Is that okay with you? Because if there's a fence on the property line, they only got 5 feet to repair the sewer. They're not even gonna be able to fit their equipment back there. So is that acceptable to the?
So they're actually, yes, they're 5 feet for each property line, so together they total 10.
Yeah, but if the utility is on one side and there's a fence, you're only at 5 feet. That's what I'm getting at.
Are you
Can I
allowing
address
fences?
that? No. So this is going to be a townhome community. There will be no fences allowed. No, so if you look at the site plan,
That's all I,
perfect, no fences,
no fences.
no fences.
And then, the fire department, are they okay with one access to the entire subdivision? Is that good? One, only one?
I had a conversation with the fire department, and they reviewed the truck turning diagram very closely, and in my conversation, they didn't bring up any issue with the single entrance.
Okay. And then the last comment was, the front building's setback is only 15 feet for the inside of the coma court. So the sidewalk is never gonna be built because cars are gonna overhang in the street with only a 15-foot setback. So there's only gonna be a sidewalk on the outside of the coma court, never on the inside. So people have to cross the street to.
That's right, there's a sidewalk on only one side of the road.
Okay, all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Likens?
I think the consideration, and I would ask our planning staff to clarify that setback, the rear yard, as proposed, 18 feet, is to accommodate the covered porch as shown in these drawings, so that there isn't a continuous large front porch across the entire rear side of the building. I think that's clear.
That can be added to the condition of the special use.
That would include the 28-foot variance.
Yes, but that will be very specific in the special use, yeah.
Mr. Shepherd, any concerns? You're good. Mr. Penn? Ms. Euler, you're good? Okay, you've been supplied with staff's recommended motion. What's your pleasure?
We have to read the full motion.
Yeah, if I can make a recommendation on what the motion should state, it should be a motion to adopt the finding of facts as outlined in the staff memo to recommend the approval of the special use permit for the planned residential development, amendment to the preliminary development plan for the subdivision plat and final development plan, subdivision plat for Clover Ridge Estates Unit 3, subject to the following condition as outlined and as stated on the record at today's hearing.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Portillo. Have a second? Any further discussion? Have a roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you. When will this go to the committee of the whole?
It will be for April 1st.
Okay, next on the staff is final subdivision plat for the Oak Creek Phase 3A. Kimberly?
If I could have a motion to open up the public hearing for case number 2019-022 for the amendment to the special use.
So moved. Second.
A motion and second. Portillo? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is now open.
Thank you, Chairman. The next case before you tonight is case number 2019-022. The applicant, Chris Cazzo of Yukon Development Incorporated, is seeking approval of a major amendment to special use permit for a planned residential development, an amendment to preliminary development plan, preliminary subdivision plan, and for Phase 3 of Oak Creek subdivision. The applicant is further dividing Phase 3 into two separate phases, 3A and 3B. The request also includes final development plan and final subdivision plat for Phase 3A. Displayed before you is Phase 3A and 3B of Oak Creek Estates. Oak Creek Estates is a PUD which consists of 92 acres that was approved in 2003 and amended in 2006. The approval allowed the development to be developed into 3 units or phases. Unit 1 consisted of 77 single-family homes. Unit 2 consisted of 35 single-family lots and 4.87 acre park site, which was recorded in 2007. And today, the developer wishes to divide the final Phase 3 into 2 phases, 3A and 3B. The preliminary plat and the PUD as well as the annexation agreement were amended in 2006, allowing 161 single-family lots. This was a reduction from the original 164. Today, the developer desires to increase the single-family lots from 161 to 163 by removing the required street stubs and reconfiguring the lots. The newly configured layout will necessitate new variances. Regarding variances, for clarification, staff's closing comments at the end of your staff memo read, staff does not support the numerous variances. This references the total quantity, being 9 variances, as not being ideal. However, some variances are supported by staff, such as front, corner side, and rear yard setbacks. There are a few variances that staff would like to discuss tonight. One is the minimum side yard setback, which is also 5 feet. The city code identifies that 10 feet minimum side yard is required for the R1 district. Staff finds that the minimum side yard, a minimum of at least 6.5 feet should be provided for a single family lot. Also, units 1 and 2 have 8-foot side yard setbacks. This would be more consistent with the 8 feet. Secondly, required trees possibly being removed need to be addressed. Staff recommends that the removed trees are to be identified on a plan so that replacement trees can be determined. This will be discussed again under the landscape plan. Variance for landscaping has been addressed for the foundation landscaping. Also, the developer has negotiated with the city and has agreed to provide a seed blanket until the time that the homeowner provides the required sod to reduce erosion. This is the last, the second to the last item in the table that's displayed before you on the monitor. So city staff has provided planting guidelines that would assist in the homeowner moving forward with providing the required foundation plantings. So a final development plan is shown. Actually, this is the PUD. So staff has requested that a final site plan showing only the 22 lots be provided by the applicant, as they are requesting final development and final subdivision plat for only 3A, not the overall 3A and 3B. So this would include only the 22 lots that are shown in the red box. This amended or revised final site plan would need to be submitted prior to committee of the whole. The amended PUD for the overall 3A and 3B is displayed. This would be a condition of approval. Final elevations, there are no new final elevations proposed at this time. However, the 5 elevations that are proposed by the developer are the same models that are provided for units 1 and unit 2, and they're consistent with what is approved and what is currently constructed. Displayed before you is a final landscape plan that was approved back in 2006. Staff found that the current landscape plan was reviewed and found to not be in compliance with the previously approved plan. There are required trees that are located along the south and east, and they're required to remain. The proposed plans show that the trees, you can see, they're not addressed on there's the current plan. So the trees that are being removed are not being addressed on the current landscape plan. However, the GIS photo, which was taken in 2019, this is provided by the County of Will, their GIS, their interactive GIS program, which is available to the public. That was the resource for this particular aerial map. So you can see that displayed at the bottom. There are some trees that are in question, whether they have been removed or will be removed. However, they're still showing that they're present. Staff recommends identifying the trees on a landscape plan so that we can determine replacement if need be. A final photometric plan was submitted and is in conformance with the development code. And the final engineering plans have been reviewed by the city's development engineer consultant. And according to the most recent review memo dated March 3rd, 2020, it identifies that outstanding comments have been addressed. Fire district and building official also reviewed the plans and have no comments at this time. Should the commission find the proposed development is acceptable, the following motion is suggested. A motion to approve an amendment to PUD, preliminary development plan and preliminary subdivision plat for 3A and 3B, and final development plan and final subdivision plat for 3A, subject to the following conditions. 1, prior to committee of the whole, a corrected final site plan is required. A corrected final site plan is required in accordance with section 156.047 per the final development code. All necessary government agency permits are required before any construction is to commence. The city of Lockport shall be copied on all correspondence and shall be provided 2 copies of all the provided and approved permits prior to construction. 3, prior to construction of financial guarantee for all public and private site improvements in accordance with the city's development code shall be submitted to the Director of Public Works and Engineering. And 4, prior to construction, the required engineering and inspection fees in accordance with the city's development code shall be submitted to the Director of Public Works and Engineering. This concludes staff's analysis, and the applicant is here this evening to address the comments.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kozlos, do you care to step up and make your remarks?
Good evening. My name is Chris Cazzo. I'm the developer, Yukon Development.
And Mr. Cosgos, before you start, could I have you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Proceed.
I didn't get to see all the comments prior to this meeting, but I want to thank the engineering staff, Phil and Bob, for helping me along here, getting this project rolling with the changes that we're proposed to do. The 6 foot, a couple of questions I have for Kimberly on the side yard. I don't know where that 6'5" side yard came in at.
In the zoning ordinance, it's the minimum allowed to be considered a legal lot of record, hence not being a nonconformity.
Okay. So was that on the cul-de-sac lots, the curved lots where we had, I was never looking for a variance on the side yard. I was gonna keep it at the 10%.
It was a comment that was identified in the staff review comments, and it was never addressed. So the assumption by staff is that when the resubmitted plans showed the same distance, that it was assumed that you were asking for the variance.
Okay. Yeah, there's that, we don't have that, as I'm aware of, I don't have that anywhere on the plan.
It could be an error in
Yeah.
the plan.
Looking at the plan, it is in the main center area.
Okay.
All of the lots along the main center have 5 foot on both sides of the lots.
It was their easement.
Correct.
Right, just the easement, not the setback. Right. I thought 6'5" setback, correct?
So he's gonna, it's not the setback that's shown, it would be the easement
It's the easement.
shown. That feature.
That would certainly satisfy the variance request for staff, and staff would certainly support.
I'm okay with it, but I'm not gonna argue, but I didn't know why that I asked for it, that's all. Okay. As for the landscape comments, we did a tree survey in the initial subdivision back in 2002, 2003. I've been digging for it. It was done by Centex Homes. All right, they're the one that did the original annexation and the plat, if you recall. Some of you might recall. But anyway, that survey was done, and through the years here, obviously, we did our mass grading way back in 2006, 2007, and we did a lot of tree removal prior to that. That was all approved by the city. And some of those trees that are on the perimeter, I mean, I'll have them checked out, but there's a lot of dead ash trees that are there, that are half fallen and all that kind of thing. But I'll definitely have it checked out. I got no problem with that. And the only other question I have is on the landscape agreement. We said that we would either seed or blanket the parkway, okay, prior to any type of occupancy permit that would be afforded for the new homes. Okay. I have no further comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak in the matter of this project? Seeing and hearing none, I'll now call for a motion to close the public hearing. Motion, second, to close the public hearing. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Comments or concerns?
My question was gonna be if they had ever done a tree survey on those two boundaries to see what is worth keeping and what isn't. Are there trees that are dead? Are there ash trees like he said? Are there diseased trees? I think they need to find a tree survey or something, or an inventory that would list all those trees and see if there are good trees that can still be saved.
I assume that line of trees is pretty mature, been there quite
Yeah,
some
no,
time.
I have no problem with that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's they're not in the way of the construction as I see it, but the thing is, if there's any trees worthwhile there can be saved, the ones that are dead or dying obviously need to come out.
Right. No, we're gonna do that. Absolutely. No problem.
And the subject property is subject to the city's tree preservation code, and that's not being changed in the amendment to the annexation agreements.
Any other comments?
Do those existing trees satisfy any required buffers to any direction of that development? I mean, there's pretty tall trees there. I mean, they're not huge, but I think they would be an amenity to some of those backlots.
Just like we did in Phase 1, we saved whatever trees we could on the property line there. Some of the residents didn't like that I did that, but they've taken down a few, but nonetheless, we've saved all the trees that were certainly salvageable, that's for sure.
So the 2006 staff memo that was presented at the time that the amendment was approved addressed that there was a buffer that was required, and the existing trees were identified that they needed to remain along the south boundary and the east boundary.
Any dead ones or diseased ones you'd take care of?
And the property to the south is unincorporated in Will County and agricultural, and some of those trees may be on the other side of the property line.
There's a lot that are on the other side of the property line.
So that's
Yeah, there's only a handful that are actually on our
on
side.
your side.
Yeah.
Mr. Profilio?
A couple things. On the lighting plan, there's a lot of pockets of red on here, which is darkness on the ring road on Mitchell and Cottonwood. So each light is shedding about maybe 160 feet of light, and then there's a dark spot of about 200 feet. Then there's another light where there's 160 feet, and there's a dark spot of 200 feet. So is that in conformance to have long dark spots like that along the roadway? Is that
It is, so it's a pretty common occurrence with this acorn lantern style light. So what you do is you concentrate them at areas of intersections, curves, and there's actually some specific distance requirements in the ordinance. This is one of the first residential areas that's going to LED.
So it's not uniform lighting the whole length, it's just
That's correct.
intermittent? Okay, that was my first question. The second one, if I understand this correctly, you're leaving it up to the homeowners to put sod in for their occupancy permit? Is that what we're doing, Lance?
No, just to clarify, in the parkways, so just the grass between the sidewalk and the back of the curb, the issue that we've run into is the code typically requires that we sod that, but he's been running into issues where machinery is still crossing the parkway to access the yard and access the back, and so it's messed that up. So what he's agreed to do is to put blanket down until such time as he's done with the construction piece of it, and then it will either be sodded over if the turf hasn't established itself
Okay, so biggie.
to be similar to sod.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with this. It correlates with the 2006 pretty closely, so that's the only comment I have. Thank you.
Mr. Penn? Wheeler? Okay, thank you.
You want to read a long motion again, Sonny?
Yes, it would be a motion to adopt the finding of facts for the amended special use and to recommend approval of the amendment to the PUD preliminary development plan and preliminary subdivision plat for 3A and 3B, and the final development plan and final subdivision plat of 3A acceptable for Oak Creek Estates, subject to the conditions as outlined in the staff memo, and with the addition of the condition that a tree preservation survey would be updated.
So moved.
Motion by Perfilio, second by Mr. Penn. Any further discussion on the motion? Here,
There's no issue with the side yard setbacks.
That is correct.
I think on the plan it's shown as a utility easement, and that is what the 5 foot is. It's not the actual setback that's shown. So in our staff report, there's not a setback issue, is what Chris clarified.
So there's not gonna be a 6.5 foot?
Could be more than that.
Maybe.
Trying to squeeze a little more in?
If you let me have it, I'll take it. We got 5-foot side yard easements on all the side yards on all the homes for whatever, streetlights, cables, all that kind of good stuff. But we generally stick to the 10% rule, and, which is, we're 80-foot wide lots, which I think our zoning only requires 75, but, so we're 8-foot side yard, generally at a minimum.
Hey, if there's no further discussion, have a roll call vote, please, on this matter.
Got it. Shepherd.
Yes.
Likens.
Yes.
Portillo.
Yes.
Oxley is absent. Maloney.
Yes.
Pin.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Kimberly, the next item on the agenda is the amendment for Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen and a minor amendment to the planned unit development for Lockport Square.
Thank you, Chairman. So the next two cases are related, and with your permission, I'd like to present the subdivision, the third subdivision for Lockport Square.
Sure.
First, before the final development plan.
Fine with me.
Thank you. The next case before you is case number 2020-002. The applicant, Jim Purinton, on behalf of Lockport Square LLC, has submitted a final plat of subdivision of Lockport Square Third Re-subdivision. This re-subdivision will create lots 10A and 10B. The proposed lot 10B is the property proposed for development as the Popeyes restaurant, which is also on tonight's agenda. The proposed lot 10A has no intended user at this time. The proposed final plat creates the following revised lots. Lot 10A is .615 acres for future commercial use, and Lot 10B, .709 acres for the Popeyes chicken and drive-through facility. The proposed final plat has been reviewed by the city's engineering consultant and is in compliance with the city's development code. Recommended motion is suggested. A motion to approve the final plat of subdivision, third subdivision of the Lockport Square, third re-subdivision. This concludes staff's analysis.
Okay, and this is for the final plat of subdivision for lots 10A and 10B. Anyone here from the public that would like to speak on this particular proposal? Okay, staff's recommendation is listed there in item 3.
Is it short this time?
Yes, it's a shorter one.
Yes,
So,
It's just one sentence then, right? The one-
yeah, it would be for both cases. It's up to the commission if you want to bifurcate and vote separately on them, which I would recommend, so.
yeah, this is two separate matters, so let's go ahead and vote on the final plat subdivision.
Okay, so motion to approve the final plat subdivision for the Lockport Square Third Re-subdivision.
Isn't the plan first before this?
I displayed presented the subdivision first.
Okay.
The chairman granted permission to reverse the.
Okay, oh, the order, okay.
The order.
Yep. So it would be for case PZC 2020-002 for the approval for the final plat. Okay.
Is it your motion? Motion by Portillo. Second by Wheeler. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Shepherd.
Yes.
Likens.
Yes.
Portillo.
Yes.
Oxley is absent. Maloney.
Yes,
Pin.
Yes.
Wheeler.
Yes.
Motion passed.
motion carries. Okay, next is case 2020-001. Kimberly?
Okay, the next case before you is the case number 2020-001. HZ Properties LTD has submitted an application for approval of a minor amendment to PUD of Lockport Square and preliminary and final development plan in one step for a standalone 2,454 square foot restaurant with drive-through facility on the proposed Lot 10B of Lockport Square Third Re-subdivision. The facility will be operated under the Popeyes Louisiana Kitchens brands. As the subject property is part of a planned commercial development, staff is recognizing this final development plan as a minor amendment to PUD. The restaurant estimates that it will employ approximately 20 people, 12 of which will be employed on a full-time basis and 8 part-time. The operating hours will be Sunday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Friday and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. A final site plan was submitted and is displayed on your monitor. It is in substantial compliance with both city and project development requirements. The site plan illustrates a single-story, 2,454 square foot building with drive-through facility centered on Lot 10B. Adequate queuing is provided. The plan demonstrates a single-stack drive-through lane with queuing for 7 vehicles. A bypass lane is incorporated into the design parallel to the drive-through lane. Site access is provided in 2 locations. The access at the northeast corner is a restricted right-in, right-out access. The southwest access drive will be the main access for the site. Circulation is provided on all 4 sides of the building. Parking is in compliance with city code and approved agreements of Lockport Square. For a drive-through facility, 1 space per 200 square feet of floor area is required, totaling 13 spaces. 35 spaces are provided. I thought I had the landscape plan displayed. Final landscape plan was submitted and is in conformance with all requirements, such as perimeter landscaping, foundation landscaping, and interior parking lot landscaping. The landscape plan provides a landscape strip which aids in the circulation of the site as it creates separation of the designated drive-through lane from the bypass lane. Final elevations were submitted and are displayed on the monitor. They are compliance with the Lockport Square architectural design standards. The single-story building is proposed as a mix of thin brick, thin stone, banding, wood siding panel, painted cornice, and glass. Required Class 1 and Class 2 materials have been provided. The building design will incorporate parapets to screen the equipment as required. A photometric plan was submitted and has been approved by the approving OEA for Lockport Square. Photometric plan is in compliance with the city's the city's lighting code and the Lockport Square architectural design standards. All fixtures are fully cut off and shielded. Signage is displayed on your monitor. The signage package for the proposed restaurant is provided. As such, the package contained wall signage, drive-through signage with menu board, speaker post clearance bar, and a freestanding sign. I do want to make a correction that instead of 1 menu board presented, there are 2 menu boards proposed. One of the signs exceeds the maximum sign area of 24 square feet with a total display area of 40 square feet. Staff supports the request for the additional display area. A similar request was granted for Panera Bread in Lockport Square, which is located on Lot 5. The freestanding sign and wall sign are in compliance with the design standards of Lockport Square. The engineering plans have been updated and outstanding comments have been addressed. Should the commission find the amendment to the PUD and the preliminary and final development plans acceptable for a restaurant with drive-through facility in Lockport Square for 10B, the following motion is suggested. A motion to approve an amendment to PUD and preliminary development plan with final development plan for a restaurant with drive-through facility in Lockport Square on Lot 10B for the Popeyes Louisiana Kitchen, subject to the following conditions. 1, all remaining items from engineering review memo are to be addressed prior to committee of the whole. This has been addressed. 2, a separate sign permit for all proposed signage shall be submitted for review and approval at the time of construction and building permit. This concludes staff's analysis. The applicant is present this evening and available to answer questions
Would the applicant like to step up?
Just to be consistent, yes. Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. And if you could state your name and spell your last name.
Ani Tipnis, Tipnis, representing Atul Karkanis Architects. And if there are any questions, I don't have anything more to add, so if there are any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Okay, any questions or concerns?
The city's okay with the operating hours?
I'll ask him.
Okay.
Yes.
It's nice to have no variances and everything follows code.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Sir, just for the record, could you spell your last name again for the city
T
clerk?
as in Tim, I-P-N-I-S.
First name.
Ani, A-N-I.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or concerns? We're all good with it? Yeah, I have no objections or concerns here. I'm glad to see the additional development in Lockport Square. Okay, the staff's recommendations.
Okay. Motion to approve an amendment to the preliminary development plan and final development plan for a restaurant with drive-through facility in Lockport Square, Lot 10B, for a minor amendment to the planned unit development of Lockport Square, subject to the second condition in the memo. The first one was met, right, with the engineering. Separate sign permit for all proposed signage shall be submitted for review and approval.
Have a second? Have a second for Mr. Penn? Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Shepherd.
Yes.
Likens.
Yes.
Portillo.
Yes.
Oxley is absent. Maloney.
Yes,
Finn.
Yes.
Wheeler. Yes. Motion passed.
motion carries. This will go to the committee of the whole on April 1st?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Lance, case 2019-004 for,
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Just since we're entering the concept plan phase of the meeting tonight, I just want to review really quickly the intent of the concept plan and what this is really all about. The concept plan does not need to be as detailed as the preliminary plan. The intent is to really provide information to assist an applicant's appraisal of the feasibility of a development concept according to the city's comprehensive plan, other city development policies, existing and projected development plans, and other development activities happening around the city. It encourages discussion of basic interests, issues, and questions related to the development proposal prior to the applicant incurring expenses associated with the submission of preliminary and final development plans, again, that are significantly more detailed, as all of you have in your packets from the last couple applications. It also offers an opportunity for citizen participation very early in the process in order to assist the developer in the city in defining the conditions under which permanent changes in land use may occur with minimum disruption of the natural and economic resources of the city. Approval of a concept plan does not guarantee approval of the preliminary development plan. However, it does give the petitioner reasonable assurance that if the agreed concept plan is carried forth, the preliminary and final plans will be granted. The PZC, all of you, forward a written report that we put together from the meeting minutes that offers a recommendation of the City Council, and the City Council then can accept or reject the concept plan by resolution. There are two additional phases that come after the concept plan, as I alluded to before. One is a preliminary plan, and the other is a final plan. Sometimes for smaller projects or projects that you feel are appropriate to do so, we can combine the preliminary and final plan. However, that does not happen very often, but that is an opportunity. Overall, start to finish, it's about a 12-month process. So, a lot of this information is because we've heard, things from the community. We want to make sure that everybody understands kind of the point in the process that we're at. It relates to this project, it relates to the next project, and it relates to the last project that I believe most of you are here to discuss. So I just want to make sure that everybody is is understanding kind of where we are in that process. And that goes for this case, the next case, and the last case on the agenda tonight. For this particular project, case number 2019-004, MI Homes has submitted a concept plan for the former steeplechase sites 3 and 4, which is a 90-acre, 246 residential neighborhood for the property generally located between 163rd Street to the north, 167th Street to the south, and Victoria Crossings to the east. It is identified by the red, oddly shaped parcel shown on the screen. Victoria Crossings is the neighborhood directly to the east of that red parcel. Morris Park is kind of in the, what I've called the U of the parcel, and it is open farmland to the west, and Cedar Ridge to the south, along with a self-storage facility, as well as a couple of residential units that front onto 167th Street. From a zoning standpoint, this was originally part of the steeplechase sites number 3 and 4, to be specific. The steeplechase project encompassed a number of different sites within this area. One is northeast of this parcel, another one is south of Cedar Ridge. This one was specifically sites number 3 and 4. It is zoned R1 and R2 with a mixed-use PUD. The site plan submittal is consistent with that zoning classification. The location of the R1 and R2 areas will need to be modified a little bit with the submittal of the new site plan, which is standard given that the original site plan was done 13 years ago, and this offers new product, obviously updated things that have happened over the last 13 years. So there will be some slight modifications. The boundaries that you see on your screen for the R2 and the R1 were established basically based on that original plan. So when you look at the original plan where the townhomes were, that's basically where they drew the line. So there will be some adjustment that will need to be made. History and background, like I said, this was part of steeplechase site 3 and 4. That was approved in 2009 by annexation resolution number 09012. Once that was approved, the development never occurred. As you might imagine, that was during the recession, so everything got put on hold. Summary of this particular plan, we are going to be revising the development agreement, the PUD, the preliminary and final development plan and plat. Due to the changes in the preliminary plan that have been suggested by the applicant, and we worked with them as well, I've kind of listed out the variations from what was originally approved. These aren't variances per se, but they are just simply differences between the original plan and this plan. There is an increase in the total number of units from 240 units to 246 units, so only an increase of 6. The original plan included 148 townhome units and 92 single-family units. This current plan shows 96 townhome units and 150 single-family units. It's almost an exact flip of what the original numbers were, which, as you might guess, lent itself to a reconfiguration of the site plan. The stormwater layout is relatively similar to what was prepared before. It's been modified to reflect the new roadway network. The floodplain that is to the, actually I can flip through a couple of these things. Floodplain to the west is still remaining intact. What you see there are some items that we've worked with the applicant to identify some of our elements in our design guidelines, our residential design guidelines for site layout and site planning that we think particularly work well for this project. The red arrows on the plan show the major entry points into it. The red box shows an example of the smaller block lengths that we advocate for in our design guidelines, making it a little bit more walkable than the 1,000-foot long blocks that we sometimes find, which requires people to walk all the way around 1,000 feet to get to the neighbor behind them. So we've advocated for some of those pieces. We also advocate in our design guidelines for connections to adjacent properties. The yellow triangles on the plan identify those connections so that in the future, when those parcels, or if those parcels develop, it offers the opportunity for residences that would occur to the west or the east to also be able to access into this community. One thing that we find oftentimes in Lockport is we have entrances with one way in and one way out, as I'm sure many people in the audience are very familiar with. So we want to advocate for more connections as we go through developments. The floodplain over there shown to the west of the site is still remaining intact. It is protected. The applicant will be going through some FEMA work with them. We do provide a crossing of that floodplain to connect the development between each other, and the detention ponds are there located in the blue circles. Like I said, roughly the same. They will not be retention ponds. They will be detention ponds, meaning that they will just be detaining the water and not retaining it as a lake. And then the last item that's popped up on the screen are where they're currently showing bike paths. This is extremely well situated to accentuate our bike master plan in the city. There is a pipeline easement that runs up the east edge of this property. The blue line that runs up there is indicative of a bike path that will be provided. What this does for us is it connects the existing bike path that is currently on 167th Street up to Morris Park and also up to 163rd Street. In the future, with the other steeplechase, site number 2 and 5, I believe, which is northwest of this property, that will offer another bike path connection that will link up to Fittyment Creek Preserve by 159th Street. The other two blue lines show an extension of that existing bike path on 167th across the frontage of this property. That will allow us, with some additional installation in front of the existing homes that are on that 167th Street facade or face of the property, to connect to the Veterans Memorial Trail, which ultimately will come down Prime Boulevard just to the west of this particular site. And that will run all the way up and down 355, which will be a great connection for all of these residents to be able to access the community at large, as well as some of our regional trail network. The green that you see to the east of Morris Park is something that we have been working with Homer Township, Lockport Township Park District, as well as us as the city, to try and find a way to better enhance the recreational open space that we have available in this area. Morris Park is an existing park owned by Homer Township. They currently have a large number of soccer fields in that area. They have a shelter with a concession stand, a parking lot, some access, as well as an older playground and a pond. As a part of this development, we are advocating for expanding Morris Park, as opposed to what was originally proposed as a separate lot dedicated to the Lockport Township Park District that would have been on that west leg of the property. In discussion with both Homer Township and Lockport Township Park District, LTPD really had no interest in a very narrow parcel that was 150 feet away from another park. And so we felt that it was in the best interest of all the neighbors and the community at large to be able to enlarge Morris Park, provide some playgrounds, provide additional soccer fields, as well as potentially an expanded parking lot to accommodate some of the overflow that currently occurs on soccer days. So we think that that is an amenity, and both groups, Homer Township and the Lockport Township Park District, are in favor of that as well. Legal details, obviously, since we're just a concept plan, will be worked out as we continue to go through the process, but that's the way that we are looking at it now. We have met with Homer School District 33C on a number of occasions to review this plan. The developer has met with them as well, so they are informed of the project. A traffic impact study will be provided during the preliminary plan phase to identify any improvements that would need to occur on 163rd Street as well as 167th Street. 163rd is a little bit odd because there's a variety of ownership between the township, the city up there, so we need to work through some of those things again with the township. Will County has jurisdiction over Division Street, so the applicant will be working with them down in that area. Concept plan does not require a public hearing, but we advocated to send out a courtesy notice to the same radius and distance that we require for our special use permits, many of which you've already heard tonight for the public hearing section of our meeting. So those were sent out to alert the neighbors directly around the site of what was happening when the meetings were. I've already gone through a number of the site plan conditions. The building elevations are also in your plan. I have added those. Oh, thought I added those. They are somewhat consistent with what is built in Sagebrook. Obviously, the developer is the same as what's in Sagebrook. This will be a mix of townhomes and single-family residential. The changes that they have made are that they are actually advocating for architectural styles, so you'll see craftsman style buildings, you'll see arts and crafts style buildings. We think that they are a definite amenity to our building stock. They will create a unique variety of housing, specifically on our east side of the community. So we are continuing to work with them as we go through the process. Again, since this is just concept plan, the architectural elevations aren't required to be submitted as a part of this, but we thought it was germane to the discussion. So those have been added to your packets. I am going to allow the developer, he's got just a quick site plan. I probably covered half of what he was going to have in there. But we'll bring that up so that he can walk through it.
Well, Lance is doing that for clarification. Is this case number 2020-004 or 2019?
I think it's 2019. There's an error on the slide.
Is it 2019-004? Because that would mean that they submitted their application in 2019. Case number.
We'll check on that.
Okay. I think it's, based upon the number, it should be 2020-004, right? Okay.
So Greg Collins is with MI Development, MI Homes. He's going to run through a very quick slideshow.
Howdy, folks. Again, can I take this out, or is it all stationary? Can you hear me? Hi, Greg Collins, as Lance had noted.
Does he need to be
MI
sworn
Homes,
in?
we're the contract purchaser of this subject property.
And before you start, could I get the spelling of your last name?
Collins.
And what was your first name?
Greg, G-R-E-G.
And could I have you raise your right hand?
Sworn in?
Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Lance, I appreciate the rundown. Obviously, I always come to these meetings wondering how staff will handle it, and getting to know Lance over the last few weeks, he's been very thorough with everything that we've worked on. It's been fantastic to work with in terms of being able to vet important issues with the site plan for what Lockport wants to see for the property, and being able to develop something in a relatively quickly amount of time so that we could be before you. So I'm not surprised with the thoroughness of what was explained, which is ideal. He went through a lot of the elements of the site plan and how we came up with both the connectivity as well as the concept of, which was really the focal point of the plan of this land swap idea from what was originally approved back in 2009. So we thought we, at this point, had a very strong plan to move forward with, present to you as well as the board to, again, get some feedback. But knowing that, it's been vetted, and from a design standpoint, I do have my engineer here if in case there's any questions regarding stormwater management. But we did the initial analysis to look at how the stormwater is going to be treated based on both prior plans as well as this plan, and treating both storm volumes initially. And we'll obviously continue that, but we wanted to make sure that this is not a concept that's kind of pie in the sky, but it is realistic as to what we'll probably come back to you with. As Lance had noted, there's a combination of lot sizes. We've got 9,000 and 7,800 square foot lots. And the approach here was simply as we did in Sagebrook, which is finishing up. And been a very successful project for us, which is why we wanted to find another location in town. We enjoyed the marketplace. We enjoyed Lockport as a city to work with. And we see a continued demand for this corridor. So we're willing to continue to look at opportunities and spread that risk around Chicagoland, and this is something where we want to continue to be. Like Sagebrook, the ratio of townhomes to single family was one that we wanted to maintain. The previous plan was more heavy on townhomes, as Lance had explained. We wanted to flip that back to where we were more comfortable with the lion's share of the project being our bread and butter, kind of a move up single family home. the two different lot sizes lend itself to just the width of the building, so someone could come in with a 40-foot wide plan, smaller square footage, or choose a floor design or a floor plan design that achieves a greater width, possibly 3-car garage opportunity and square footages, so that the range hits multiple segments of our buyer profile. So for the single family, that was our approach. The townhomes, similar to Sagebrook, where we have a combination of units within each building, of both a master bedroom on the first floor unit, as well as just a smaller 2-bedroom unit, but again, ranging in square footage size from 1,500 up to almost 2,200 square feet. Again, meeting different buyer profiles that we saw at Sagebrook. The approach with the architecture was, as many builders as well as us are starting to realize and listen to a new era of buyers, to come up with something a little bit fresh and new on the architecture. We kind of joke that a lot of us build suburban eclectic. You can't point to an elevation and say what it is. It's tough because over time, builders have morphed the elevations into something it's hard to define. So what you're seeing now is an emphasis again on a nomenclature for architecture that's specific to a design. You're probably hearing urban farmhouse all over the place, and it's being done very well, and it's being introduced at all different price points, from heavy custom homes down to entry-level homes. We are introducing it here for townhomes as well. We're going to introduce 3 different elevations, and you'll see in your packet. I'll just jump down to that, where it's the same building, but we're going to introduce 3 different, I call them skins, in elevation designs, where you have a traditional style, which is that top left that you see on your screen, but again, incorporating a little bit more design elements in gables, a little bit more design elements in the garage with lights. And then you'll see in the lower left a farmhouse style. You'll see in the middle a craftsman style. Again, same building, but introducing something that provides some variety, some context, and a little bit more character to the subdivision. So what happens with these, and we've run into a lot of different architectural review boards across Chicagoland, that they hold you to a certain character and a certain design, because if you call it out a craftsman style, well, it comes with certain design elements. So slapping and cladding it with some other type of material that doesn't fit that particular design starts to make it kind of look like a cartoon a little bit sometimes. So we try to be true as much as we can to those elevations, which is also what we've done with the single family, as you see, where we developed, we call it stylized, but for this program it was, I think we had 6 different elevation choices for each floor plan. Floor plans range inside, again, from that smaller square footage of 2281 all the way up to almost 3,400 square feet. Again, 2 and 3 car options. But you can see with the design elements, this is the same home, but we're trying to create an environment where you get a different look and feel to the architecture. So with Lance's direction, we've been working on, where we can apply some of the materials that's, I think, an expectation of Lockport. Keeping in mind, I try to tell them, but we want to still keep a true character of, let's say, a farmhouse or traditional colonial revival, so on and so forth. So those will further be refined, but hopefully, you guys had a chance to look at that, and I like what you see, and you can provide me feedback tonight. That'd be fantastic. We've got a big agenda. I won't want to bore you any longer, so I'm open to questions, comments, concerns, issues. Lance had mentioned the connectivity with the bike path. We've got an opportunity, which is really actually interesting, with that gas pipeline easement. The easement's actually not very wide, but because of where it's located and because of our setbacks from it, we've got some area that's no man's land. It becomes an HOA outlet, or we can provide that bike path. So that's actually a realistic goal, rather than showing something on a concept plan at times that is a regional bike path that sometimes doesn't come to fruition. This is something that's realistic. So something that we think will be pretty cool in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak on this proposal? Got a card here from Mr. Bruce Kozlowski. Okay.
Go to the podium and state your
My name is Barry Lange, Lange. My address is 15164 West Victoria Crossing Court.
And what's that aerial, what was your first name again?
Barry,
Oh, Barry, okay.
B-A-R-R-Y,
And,
Lange.
Yes, could I have you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
My concern is where I live, it's lot number 88 in Victoria Crossing, which is at the eastern end of this subdivision. And a couple of concerns that we have there is, number one, from the concept plan that Lance Deese was so kind enough to send me, as one was not included in the letter, which we appreciated. It's very hard to tell the distance between the property lines and that eastern end to the property lines of Victoria Crossing Court. It appears, based on this, that it's about 60 feet.
What's the easement?
I see a 30-foot line here, but that does not include the whole thing,
Right.
because the pipeline easement, I believe, was about 50, 60 feet.
The easement itself, I think, is only 25, but again, we have east of the easement, I want to say it's 40 feet.
All right.
And then another small width, and then the rear lot lines.
Okay, so that's one concern that we weren't quite clear on how far the distance was. The other is, just to the north of Victoria Crossing, over here, there's another farm field, which drains, unfortunately, into the backyards of the Victoria Crossing residents who live on the northern portion there. That drainage runs all the way along that, those property lines, which is affectionately called the river, which runs through the back of, I think it's 89, lot 89 there, and 88 out into this field. There's quite a lot of water, so our concern is the drainage going to be appropriate to handle this runoff, so it doesn't end up in our backyards and our basements? Those are the concerns that we have.
Okay, thank you, sir.
That's all I have.
Craig, would you like to address this concern?
You know, as many of you are well aware, but a lot of folks in this room aren't, you know, as part of this process, we spend a tremendous amount of time and energy on design engineering the site. And really, most of the design engineering is for stormwater conveyance and design. There are strict rules, and I will go on record tonight. I've got Mike May here. He's, I would say, by far the best in terms of stormwater management that I've ever dealt with from an engineering standpoint. So part of this design process is to, by law, you know, strict guidelines that we have to control the water that we convey, that we generate into our ponds, hold it restricted at a more restrictor standard than what you get today. That's how the codes and design is been set up in every community we deal with this. It's maintaining stormwater so that it's released at even a lesser rate than what you get with open farm field. I can't solve what happens on the north of you because it's obviously an unrestricted issue. But from our standpoint, we have to collect our water, hold it, and release it where it needs to go appropriately by design, and we go through hours of review.
Over the 15 years that I've lived there, that field behind the subdivision there, basically turns into a lake in the spring. So, and the original plan, I believe, was done by McNaughton, which had, right behind those, the Victoria Crossing, I believe it had a 200-foot retention pond there, which, you know, we were not concerned about any, you know, rainwater with the retention pond being there of that size.
Right.
So that, like I said, that's our concern, and, you know, we hope that's all taken into consideration when the concept plan is developed and approved.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak in this particular proposal? Please step up to the microphone and state your name.
My name is Bruce Kozlowski, Kozlowski. I live at 15433 West 163rd, and that's the property.
Could I have you raise your right hand?
What's that?
Please raise your right hand, sir. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm directly adjacent to the northwesternmost part of this plan. My concerns are is it really looks a little dense for the size of the property, and it brings the buildings right on top of me, and I don't see any landscape berm or anything as a barrier between us. I do see them on some small sections within the plan, but not by me. I'm concerned about the drainage because this property west of me, it's a hill that gently slopes down to me. And then it just keeps going down and down till you get to the park, Morris Park. I would like to see what's going to be done about the drainage. You can't very well tell from this map. And it looks like by looking at this, it looks like with very few changes, some of these homes could be backed off a little more for me and we could have a berm. You'll notice that the street going from north to south is swaying this way. It could go straight, give us more room, but also maybe to get less density, possibly some homes could be put in there and transfer some of the single attached townhomes to another part of the plan. My next concern is there's a cross street a little less than halfway down from my property that dead ends right on the property line. And I wondered how the snow removal or water would be handled at that point. Is that going to be blocked off, or is that just going to allow to drain into my property, or have the snow removal dumped into there in the wintertime? Also, at the southernmost tip of my property, if there was a way to do this, I see a road ending there too on my neighbor's property. If that could be worked out for me to have that on that southern tip, that high ground there would never be cut off from being able to drive in and out of there. I don't want to be surrounded and have that property cut off. That's really what I have. I'd appreciate any consideration you can give to that. And please let me know what we can do.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
This other gentleman?
My concerns were also with the flood.
State your name and
Roman
sworn in.
Soltis,
Could you spell your last name, please?
Soltys.
And what was your first name again?
Roman, Roman.
Okay. And could you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
My concerns were also with the flooding.
Oh, and could we get your address just for the clarification of where you are based upon the site?
15408 Long Meadow Court. My concerns were also, if we go back to the other map before that one, right where the pond is over here, right in the middle of that pond, every time it rains hard, all that water, our pond actually overflows and it goes right into the farm field. My concern is you're not planning on elevating the land, are you? Where the farmland is, because right there, it's around a 6-foot hill. But if you bring the ground up to that 6-foot hill, we're gonna flood. Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. I
Greg?
mean, a quick look and, maybe my engineer grabs my jacket, but the way I see it is, my guess is your pond is collecting, like I just said, right? It's collecting
whole
water for your subdivision, right?
Right there in
And
that
it looks
pond.
like it's outfalling here. See this?
But it does, when it overflows, it's right where you're, right in the middle where that tip is.
Right, it's probably maybe.
Right there.
Right, maybe.
And everything flows into the farmland.
That's something we'll have to take a look at in terms of those kind of rain events, but this is
plan
probably.
to elevate the land, to bring dirt
We don't.
in, or just to level
It depends on how you handle grading. Like I said, though, elevating land so that it drains to you, I can't do. It's illegal. I can't do that. That's why everyone has a rear yard storm sewer, to collect that and convey it somewhere else. And then we meet the existing topography at each property line. That's by law, you have to. So that you're not conveying stormwater from me to you. But now that you've gone on record regarding a possible outfall situation with your pond, we have to look at that because this relates to how this detention might work. Right.
And again, our project,
Right.
right there is the, right
Here's your
right
pond.
there. Right
Exactly.
there is where it overflows into the pond.
Right, you probably have an overflow and also a pipe that comes out and probably pipes the water out into this drainage ditch.
Which is not sufficient enough.
It fills up.
Yes, when there's.
Yeah. And again, this is a concept plan, so there is no drainage plan at this time. Once they get over the concept plan approval process, then the applicant will be required to bring engineering plans that will meet the drainage requirement under the city code, you know, the state code, all the federal regulations. So at this time, the drainage is not necessarily being detailed and addressed, but it will be at later
Quite
point.
important because
Yes,
I'd rather hear
it's
it
an-
now
yes.
than in the middle of my public hearing and I've spent 50 grand on engineering
Yep.
and then I gotta re-engineer it.
Again,
Yeah.
So
20
I have no
years-
problem listening to it
20
now if
years
there's issues.
We've lived there, we've never
Right.
flooded because it overflows at that point.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else care to speak on this proposal? Panel, what are your concerns?
Obviously, screening for the townhomes. You have an office business park to the west. You're gonna screen those townhomes from that, obviously, I would think. Yes. And on the east side, likewise, Victoria Crossings west would be, there would be some kind of landscape buffer along the easement, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to work through landscape once we get in a preliminary plan. I do want to note that the parcel to the west is not annexed into the city and is zoned agricultural in the county. So, you know, just to clarify, there is not an office parcel to the west.
Yes, okay, I understand.
I appreciate your attention to the architectural detail. Provides value not only to the development, but to the community. Thank you.
You're good?
Oh, the plat survey is incomplete too. The townhome section is missing.
Okay. So noted.
Yeah, we just updated, yes.
Okay, overall, I like what I see. Any particular sequence you have in mind for all of this?
In terms of a
North to south or east to west or?
it's south to north, marketing division north, and 3
Okay.
phases. We don't
And all-
understand the phasing necessarily, but that's the idea.
And all your construction material will come and go on Division Street, given that 163rd has a
That
load
makes the
limit?
most sense, given,
Yes.
yes, given the condition of the road, yes.
Okay,
So just to clarify, you know, the last piece of the memo offers the recommendation that we would offer you as staff. It basically, a motion to approve the concept plan for a townhome and single-family neighborhood, subject to the following items. The applicant acknowledges that staff has completed a general review only of the concept plan, and that a more detailed review will occur during the submission of preliminary and final plans. Staff comments are general, intentionally general, intended to outline the steps necessary if the project moves forward and to provide guidance and considerations for future submittals. An amended annexation agreement will be submitted with the submission of the preliminary development plan application to address those uses, the general design standards, any other details. Any comments that are identified from our development engineering consultant, review letters related to the plan review will need to be addressed at the time of the PUD process and plan review. So you'll be seeing those at preliminary plan and final plan, just like you have for the other cases tonight. And that the concept plan is valid for 1 year from the date of approval. And approval, as I had mentioned before, provides reasonable assurance to the developer that they can go ahead and expend the funds necessary to update it to preliminary plan standards.
okay, can I have a motion to that effect?
One more thing, the dwelling units per acre was within the envelope for the zoning, right?
Yes.
One more thing, this plan says 246 units, and this on the screen says 247.
Sneak a lot in?
I'll check that, might have snuck one in, I don't know. I gotta count the townhomes.
We'll get that one out. Don't worry about it.
What's the motion that we got? Do we have to read
As stated.
Sonny, are you supposed to do the?
Lance stated it in the record. It's the actually motion to recommend approval for the concept plan as outlined in the staff memo and as stated with the different statements regarding that this is a basic general comments made, and the concept plan is good for only 1 year.
Okay, so moved, that's my motion.
So moved by Mr. Portfolio. Second by Wheeler. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 And this will also go before the committee of the whole's April 1st meeting.
April 1st?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next, Kimberly on the car wash concept plan.
Potentially made this last.
Thank you, Chairman. Next case before you, zoning case 2020-003. William Klump has submitted concept plan for an express car wash for the property generally located at the southeast corner of East 3rd Street and East 9th Street. This is the old Pizza Hut property. The subject property is Zone C2, Community Commercial, and it's comprised of 2 parcels. The applicant is seeking formal concept plan review for assurance that the car wash will be a desirable and compatible use for the subject property. A car wash is a special use within the C2 district, and the applicant desires to get feedback from the city prior to moving forward with the special use and final development plan. The concept plan has more information than what you're used to seeing, with grading information provided. The applicant's been working with engineering staff to address stormwater concerns on the site, as there is a natural stream on premise. Engineering may need to chime in, but from what I understand, the proposed retaining wall that's shown at the rear of the property will be amended to allow for adequate space for screening or landscaping where the property abuts residential property. So the site plan, or the concept plan, that is displayed on your monitor illustrates a 4,863 square foot proposed commercial building for a car wash. Main access will come from East 9th Street, and which is within the IDOT jurisdiction. Parking is provided along 9th Street, which is intended for the customer vacuum area, and also the vehicle queuing lanes enter through the vacuum area. Building elevations are displayed. They were submitted for review. However, the materials have not been called out. But it appears that the exterior is comprised of mainly masonry materials and will likely comply with city design and development guidelines. Landscaping plans will be required during the preliminary plan review and will need to comply with city design and development guidelines. Engineering review letter dated March 4th, 2020 is attached to the staff memo and addresses that the comments applicable to are applicable to the future review process. Fire District, the concept was submitted to the Lockport Township Fire Prevention District for review, and they have no comments or concerns at this time. Suggested motion is as follows. A motion to approve the concept plan for an express car wash in the C2 zoning district, subject to the following conditions. 1, the applicant acknowledges that staff has completed a general review only of the concept plan, and that a more detailed review will occur with submission of a preliminary and final development plan. Staff comments at this time are general, intended to outline steps necessary if the project moves forward, and to provide guidance and considerations for future submittals. A special use permit will be required. Concept plans approvals are valid for 1 year from the date of approval. Approval of a concept plan provides the applicant with reasonable assurances to move forward with submission of a request to rezone. Pardon me, this is incomplete or incorrect. The preliminary plan shall be in conformance with an approved concept plan. And I do want to point out that rezoning will not be required with this particular development. However, preliminary and final plan will be required. And staff is suggesting that they are completed in one step at the same time. This completes staff's analysis, and the applicants are here this evening to answer concerns and comments.
Okay, if the applicants would step up and state your name and get sworn in.
Please state your name and spell your last name.
Bill Klump, K-L-U-M-P.
Thomas Howard, H-O-W-A-R-D.
And if you could both raise your, okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. My name is Bill Klump. I live in Darien, and together with my wife and business partner, we've owned car washes for 25 years. My first one is in Brookfield Express Car Wash. I have another one, Lamont Express Car Wash, and another one, Romeoville Express Car Wash.
I'm Tom Howard. I also live in Darien with my wife Laura. We own 2 car washes, one in Joliet and one in Oswego. We're also currently building another car wash in Hickory Hills.
Okay, we've been doing this a long time. We're actually quite good at it. I like the site layout. It's a difficult piece of property, but I think our use is maybe the best use anybody's come up with in a long time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak on this particular proposal? Seeing and hearing none. Panel, what are your concerns or questions?
The queuing, how many cars can you fit?
We can get-
avoid queuing out on 9th Street?
We can get 35 cars on the lot in the queue.
I think you're gonna have that. People aren't gonna go in there if there's 35 cars.
Those will be there's about 30 days a year
Okay.
where you'll have days that you'll need that kind of queuing,
Okay.
especially after a fresh snow and salting.
Yeah, next
Those are the days that you need the 35 queues. That doesn't include the amount of cars that'll also be in the vacuum stalls as well as in the tunnel. So there's
So is there screening required along 9th Street? Is there room
Yes.
for it?
Yes.
There's room? Okay. That's all I had, thank you.
Questions or concerns?
My concerns are about traffic, but I trust that it'll be resolved once you get more into the details.
Okay, yeah. And yes, this does mean that the old Pizza Hut building will be going away, but I don't consider it at all to be anything historically or architecturally significant, so it's not a critical loss to the community, at least.
All choked up.
Yeah, that building is pretty tired. Okay, recommendations.
Do we have to read all this again?
Just make.
Okay, motion to approve the concept plan for an express car wash in the C2 zoning district, subject to staff's 3 conditions.
Minus the rezoning. Correct? Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Shepherd.
Yes.
Likens.
Yes.
Portillo.
Yes.
Oxley is absent. Maloney.
Yes.
Yes.
Wheeler. Yes. Motion passed.
Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, staff.
Thank you. Next case, Redwood proposal. Lance?
Yes. So this case is PZC 2019, sorry, I don't know why I keep putting 2020 up there. It's 2019-023. Redwood USA has submitted a concept plan for a 30-acre, 160-unit residential apartment neighborhood. Property generally located west of Broken Arrow and east of Lago Vista, connecting to Farrell Road at Broken Arrow Drive. You can see in the yellow box on your screen where that property is located. Kelly McIver is here from Redwood. She will have a series of slides that she will walk through, so I won't go into too much detail on them, but specific to this particular project, just a couple items that both, you know, respond to some of the concerns that we've heard from the community, as well as some other things, and I'm sure Kelly will touch on those as well. Redwood has been building communities since 2003. They have to date never sold one of their neighborhoods, so they have held them from the first one that was built. Across those 70 neighborhoods, their typical renter age is age 51. They generally generate about 11 school children per 100 units, which means that out of this development, somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 K through 12 would be generated, so it's a pretty low number of kids. 70% of their renters across their portfolio are empty nesters, typically attracted for a variety of reasons, whether or not it's proximity to another age restricted or targeted community that is owner occupied as opposed to rental. The property is zoned R2 with a residential PUD along Farrell Road, west of Broken Arrow Drive. The site plan that is submitted requests a rezoning to R3. However, the applicant is open to reducing the quantity of units within each building to 4, which allows it to retain its R2 designation and not require that R3 rezoning. The subject property was previously known as Copperstone, which was developed by Monticello Homes LLC in 2004. Upon approval of that plan, the development did not take place. That development had 140 units. Due to the changes to that preliminary plan, we suggested that the applicant go through the concept plan review process, which again, as I kind of outlined before, this process is not as detailed as what we will have at the preliminary plan session. There are a lot of steps between now and when we get to finish. Tonight is just the concept plan. There are still 2 submittal steps that would follow the concept, preliminary plan and final plan. The concept plan approval process requires at a minimum 3 meetings over a span of 2 months. That would be the Plan and Zoning Commission, which is you tonight, the City Council Committee of the Whole, which is a discussion body for the City Council, and then an action body of the City Council. So 3 meetings at each phase. Similarly, preliminary plan and final plan will take the same amount of meetings for a total of 9 different public meetings that would occur over the time frame of this project. That typically takes, on its fastest timeline, would be approximately 12 months. We typically require that our applicants submit their drawings and revised drawings 2 months in advance of when they want to be on the Plan and Zoning Commission agenda, which allows us as staff to be able to review the project, come up with review letters, send those comments to the applicant can respond, they adjust their drawings, and then ultimately we get it to you for that hearing. Although not every project is the exact same, that schedule of the 12 months is for a typical project, which is what this Redwood will be going through. The approval of the concept plan, again, is not a binding approval. It does give that reasonable assurance, as both Kimberly and I have said tonight on 2 separate cases. As a part of the concept plan process, no applicant is required to post signs or send out official notifications to surrounding residents, but that will occur during the preliminary and the final site plan process. As a benefit towards the residents, we thought it would be important that they send out notices to our standard 250-foot per law for any of our public notices. That would be a 250-foot radius from all the property edges. Those notices did go out as a courtesy notice to those neighbors so that they were alerted to the project and could participate in the discussion. We also do not require neighborhood meetings of the applicants. However, Redwood felt that this was an important step for them in their process and scheduled one on their own. It was not an official city meeting. We did receive some questions about whether or not there was minutes or video from that meeting because it's not an official city meeting and it wasn't hosted in a forum that we had that service. There are no video or minutes from that. However, from what I understand, there were about 45 to 50 residents that did come to the meeting. There was also some question as to why the meeting occurred at Mistwood Golf Course as opposed to somewhere closer to Lockport. The applicant did call a number of other locations that had the opportunity to house the number of people that they wanted to try and house. Mistwood was the one that was available for that evening. They were planning to accommodate the 75 neighbors that were notified as a part of the 250-foot notice. They also wanted to accommodate them to each have a guest, as well as additional people that would undoubtedly find out, as many have via Facebook and other resources throughout the neighborhood and the community. Citizens will have the opportunity to speak and hear about the project at all 9 meetings, and they will be noticed with posted signs on the site and a letter to those adjoining residents prior to those meetings. The agenda and the packets are also available on the city's website prior to any of the meetings as well. Let's see, going back to the Copperstone development, the changes in the preliminary plan that Redwood is proposing, that's what caused us to recommend that they go through the concept plan process, an overview of the deviations that they are proposing for this project, and I'll come up with a couple things here. So the zoning is still the R2, so that would remain, assuming as a condition of this approval that they would reduce their building units down to 4 per unit as opposed to the 6 that is currently shown on this plan. Compared to the original Copperstone plan, the number of units has increased from 140 units to 160 units. The original plan, the current plan is contemplating the rental home. The physical size of the units is very similar to the original plan as well. This development will be a private neighborhood, including private streets and on-site management. The roadway network, as currently shown on the plan, has been modified from the original plan to reflect their product type and better align with many of our city's design guidelines and site planning conditions that we ask all of our applicants to compose. And I've done a number of similar things that I did for the MI Homes thing on this plan, short walkable blocks, access points to adjoining properties to the north and the south. We've certainly heard a number of times about the access off of Broken Arrow Drive, so we want to make sure that we are planning for the future. This is not to say, much like with MI Homes, that the adjacent properties are going to develop tomorrow or even within a year, but that is up to those property owners. We just want to make sure that we reserve those opportunities to disperse the traffic across the site and between other sites. The stormwater layout has been modified from the original plan as well. This contemplates helping with some flooding issues that are occurring on the east side of Farrell Road within the Broken Arrow subdivision on their northwest corner. We also think that it will assist with some of the water issues that are occurring on the east edge of Lago Vista as well. As noted before, further engineering plans and details will be worked out during preliminary plan and final plan in order to make sure that all of those things are working together and we've resolved those issues. We have discussed the project with Fairmont School District. I believe Diane is here, the superintendent, tonight to listen to the presentation as well. Again, based on their typical renter profiles and their portfolio projects, they anticipate approximately 11 students per 100 units, so again, a total of roughly 18. The traffic impact study will be provided at the time of preliminary development plan review. Those road improvements that will be anticipated out of that traffic study are not currently shown on this plan, but as that traffic study is developed, that will identify improvements that would need to occur on Farrell Road in order to make access good and easy in and out for everybody. We will work with the applicant to identify any of those improvements with Phil and Bob on our engineering team. We'll be working closely with them. Let's see. The elevations for the, and one other thing, sorry. They have worked with the Lockport Township Park District because this will be a private neighborhood. There is no public park per se. However, that green box that just popped up on the screen would be the location of the park that they proposed for the residents within the development. The yellow lines that are showing up on the plan also show an extensive bike path and walking path network throughout the development. It makes a complete loop as well as a cut down the middle so that they can access both the Farrell Road path that would be ultimately an extension of the Farrell Road project that was built last year along the high school athletic fields. As that continues to come south, we want to make sure that we're accommodating that for all the communities that are further south of 167th Street. I think that is all on the plan. The building elevations are shown in here. These are showing the 4-unit plans. Again, these are not required as a part of the concept plan submittal, but we simply show you to give you a sense for what the applicant is proposing for the project. So I've gone over the Park District items, gone over the engineering. The Fire District did review the plan and had no issues. They will obviously have additional comments during the preliminary plan once they need to start doing fire truck turning movements and other things like that. Kelly will be presenting a couple slides that'll give you a better sense for Redwood as a whole, but also this project. However, before she does that, I'll run through the motion that we recommend. A motion to approve the concept plan for the attached residential single-family apartment neighborhood, subject to the following items. The applicant acknowledges, again, that the staff is reviewing this for general concept plan only, and that more detailed reviews will occur as we continue to go through the process. Our comments are general at this time, and they're just intended to outline the steps necessary if the project moves forward and to provide guidance and considerations for future submittals. An amended annexation agreement and development agreement shall be submitted with the submission of the preliminary development plan application that will address the uses, the general design standards, as well as any other details and obligations that the developer is responsible for performing. Refining the site plan to consist of only the 4-unit buildings, which would remove the rezoning requirement to the R3 district. Any comments that are in the development engineering consultant review letters that we have had those correspondence to date will be taken into consideration as we advance this project down the line. And then again, concept plan approvals are valid for 1 year from the date of approval, and that this approval provides the applicant with reasonable assurance that they will receive preliminary and final preliminary and final plan approval as long as it continues to be consistent with the concept plan. But there is a lot of work that needs to happen between today and if it was going to be approved in the future. So with that, I will help Kelly get set up. And the volume's on, so I will give you that.
Swearing.
Great, thank you.
And Ms. Mulcher, right?
McIvor, it's M-C-I-V-O-R.
Okay. So you don't pronounce the M? Is this, no?
No,
Oh,
McIvor.
McIvor, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
okay.
like the guy on TV,
McIvor.
the old guy on TV, the guy on old TV.
Yes. And if I could have you raise your right hand, and do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And just your business address.
It's 7510 East Pleasant Valley Road, Independence, Ohio, 44131. Thank you all for hearing my application. I'd just like to echo every other applicant tonight to say thank you to staff. We've gotten a lot of attention, a lot of thoughtful review comments. It's been really helpful to the process. So tonight I wanted to talk to you a little bit about who Redwood is, who are Redwood residents, introduce you to our product, and then just walk you through the site plan and some of the things that are going on there. There we go. So Redwood is a single-story apartment developer. We build one thing and one thing only. It is 2-bedroom, 2-bath, single-story apartment homes with an attached 2-car garage, a 2-car driveway on the front, and a 10-by-10 patio on the back. It looks like, if you drive by it, it looks like a single-story ranch condominium neighborhood. It doesn't look like a traditional apartment neighborhood, and it doesn't live like one either. When our owner, Steve Kimmelman, came up with the idea, those many years ago, it started with the idea that just because you move out of a single-family home, you shouldn't have to give up the feel of living in a home. And that's really what we're geared towards. Our renters are renters by choice. They choose this environment. They want to be there. So when you see our neighborhoods, you'll see that they live like a home. Our garbage is curbside pickup, the lawns are mowed, you've got your garage there and your space. It really is just a home replacement. We have 13,000 apartment homes currently that we own and manage across the Midwest and the South. We are in Indiana, Kentucky, the Carolinas, Iowa, Michigan, and Ohio. We're based in Cleveland, Ohio. We own every apartment building that we've ever built. Redwood USA is about a 475-person firm, and Redwood Acquisition is the tiniest part of that firm. We're about 50 people. That's because what we are is a property management company, and my job is to grow the company by creating new neighborhoods for people to live in and for our property managers and our maintenance techs to service. So we own everything we have ever built. We started building in 2003, and if you go through any of our first communities, they look great. I started like 4 years ago, and I drove a community on the west side in the middle of winter, and if you've ever been to Cleveland in the middle of the winter, it's terrible. Everything looks terrible. The sky matches the pavement. Everything looks dreary. But I drove this site, and I came to my boss, and I was like, when did we build that? It looks so nice. And he said, oh, that's like from 2005, 2007. And I started in 2014. So that was a 7-year-old community, and it looked great. We take great amount of pride in what we build. We are there for the long term, and we maintain our properties. We have an active and funded capital reserve replacement fund. Not only is that required by our lenders, we're private lenders, but also because we do ongoing improvement. So it's not like we wait till something breaks or we wait till there's a problem. There's ongoing refurbishment in our neighborhoods. One great thing about Redwood, I think, is we have these 8 core values. If you come to our office in Independence, you will see a big full-size canvas in the lobby. Everyone's got these on their desks. I have business cards with them I can hand out to you. We really live our core values. The first thing is do one thing really well. This is what we do. We build 2-bedroom, 2-bath, single-story apartment neighborhoods with a 2-car attached garage, a driveway, and a patio on the back, and then we staff and service them. That is what we do. We can also, when we have our company retreat, we get quizzed on these. Please don't quiz me, I could tell you them, but not in order. So this is a little video. This is actually a little old. It's about 4 years old. So the pictures that I show you later are actually what our interiors look like now. So you're going to see some of our older interiors. And the rent information at the end is based on the rents from 4 years ago. So that's a little different, and we'll go over that. But I know there's been a lot of question about who lives at Redwood and how does our neighborhood work and who would want to live here. And I thought this would be a really nice video to show.
I love single-story living. Our last apartment was 3 stories, and unfortunately, we had no worries of a house because we had to do everything.
And I just did not want the apartment living where you had to park in the parking lot and walk up the steps.
We did live in another facility where they had a garage, but it was not attached to the building, so we had to walk out in the snow, and it was getting difficult, especially with groceries hauling up and down the stairs.
It's obnoxious when you hear people pounding, or you can hear them slamming cupboards, and we've never had that issue here.
Never dreamed about being this quiet because I was worried, but it's just so much more like home.
When we first arrived and opened the door, we looked in and went, wow.
Here, I mean, it's just wide open.
The kitchen's huge, and during the winter, it's great having a garage because you don't have to go outside. You can just walk into the garage.
And to come here and have the quietness that we have and the environment that's around us is just great.
We want to feel like we're in a neighborhood, but we don't want to have to worry about doing all the maintenance and everything that you do when you own a house.
Everything's just on the floor. Sweeping along is just a straight shot. You know, I don't have to go up and downstairs, carry things out.
It's just been a great choice for us to make to move to Redwood.
It's just wonderful living here.
and I fell in love with it.
I don't live in an apartment.
I live at Brentwood.
So the people that you saw in there are actual residents. It's actually very typical of who lives with us. Across our portfolio, which is 13,000 apartment units strong, the average, I would say 70% of our residents are empty nesters. The average age of a resident is 51, so you'll find people on either side of that, but generally it's empty nesters. The other 30% are generally young professionals, a lot of times with odd sleep hours. One of the amenities that we offer is peace, quiet, and comfort, and that's why we don't generally build tennis courts or community centers, things like that in our neighborhoods for a couple reasons. One is, and related to the peace and quiet, is it creates a noise and a gathering space, and these, we're very popular, as I say, with people with odd sleep hours. So a lot of that remaining 30% is emergency services personnel. We have a lot of hospital personnel, airport personnel where we're near airports, because you can come in and you can sleep during the day. Most of our residents come from within a 3-mile radius of the neighborhood, so they are actually people who are already here. They're your neighbors today. Because they're already here, they're already invested in the community center, in the Curves, and the YMCA. They're already paying for those services elsewhere. So to build them on our site and build them into the rent, especially for a price-sensitive market like empty nesters, it's not really successful for us. So we're able to offer peace and quiet instead. It's a very valuable amenity to our residents. We're also very high service, so we can offer a maintenance-free lifestyle. We are not assisted living, but we, as I mentioned, about 99% of our communities have a live-in leasing professional and a live-in maintenance technician. So if you need your big package carried in from your car, we'll carry it in. If you need us to come pick up your rent check for some reason you're not using the online rent pay, we'll come do that for you. We are FHA compliant in all our rental practices, so if you meet the rental requirements, we will rent to you, but we design our homes in a way that is attractive to empty nesters. We're FHA compliant in the neighborhood, ADA compliant in the apartment home. So for example, there's zero entry from the garage to the kitchen. There are levers instead of doorknobs. All the bathrooms are plumb for grab bars. So we build our homes in a way that is attractive to empty nesters. And we have found that we are able to offer an age-in-place solution for communities. So when you've got somebody who's coaching the baseball team or is volunteering at the library and they're tired of mowing their lawn or tired of paying their high property taxes, there's a place they can come and live until they're ready to move to Florida or just stay indefinitely. Our average resident stay is about 3 years. Our leases are 1 year. They are very detailed addenda in the leases to make sure that we can maintain that peace and quiet neighborhood. Our lease terms are generally for 1 year because eviction is challenging. So if you cannot, if you find that our neighborhood is not a good fit for you, we can just not renew your lease. But the average person stays for 3 years, and about 12% of our residents stay for longer than 5 years. So we really are a solution for neighborhoods who want people to have a place to age in place. As I mentioned, most people come from a 3-mile radius of the site. Our homes are between 1,200 and 1,600 plus square feet. We'll charge here about $1.60 a square, which is going to be the equivalent of $2,100 to $2,300 a month, which is equivalent with property taxes of a payment on a $250,000 home. So that gives you a sense of the kind of people that are moving into the neighborhood. We do value a very tightly controlled community, and through the consistent application of strict rental criteria, we're actually able to control who lives in our neighborhood better than a single family neighborhood that maybe doesn't have an HOA covenant or doesn't have HOA covenants that restrict rentals. Part of our rental approval criteria is everyone who's going to live in the home who's over 18 needs to go through the same process. They all have to appear on the lease. They all have to go through the same screening process. We run a rental history, so if you've ever been evicted, we don't rent to you. If you've ever had anything to do with late payments, things like that, we take that into consideration. We run a credit score check. We also run a criminal background check. So if you've ever had a felony assault conviction, a sexual assault conviction, a felony theft conviction, we will not rent to you. If you have 2 DUIs and, to look at my notes, excuse me. 2 DUIs within 5 years of the application date, we will not rent to you. If you have a misdemeanor in connection with another crime within a certain amount of time, we will not rent to you. So we are able actually to control who lives in our neighborhood much better than many of our neighbors can. So I want to talk a little bit about Redwood's impacts. Again, we talked about that age-in-place solution. What does that mean for empty nesters? What does that mean when you have a neighborhood of empty nesters? How does that impact Lockport? The first thing is we're going to pay property taxes on our homes, but conversely, that we're not going to impact the school district in a major way. We have very consistent impacts across the portfolio, and we validate the statistics that I give you on a regular basis, so I can make sure that what I'm saying is right. And a couple of years ago, for example, our traffic studies were about 10 years old, our trip generation. So last year we recertified our trip generation studies, and in 10 years they had not changed. They had changed infinitesimally, barely a statistical difference. So we really are very consistent impacts across the portfolio. With school districts, we have found that whether we are in a school district, in a neighborhood with an amazing school district, or in a neighborhood with a school district that is maybe less funded or has more challenges, we tend to have the exact same impacts. And that is 11 students per 100 units, which, as Lance mentioned, would be about 18 students here. And generally, these are students who are already in the neighborhood. They are the kids of, depending on how you look at it, the winner or loser of the house battle and the divorce. So they are generally already here. We have lower traffic impacts than a single family. The car stat that everyone quotes, if you look online, is an Experian study from 2008 that says single family has 2.28 average cars per home across the United States. I've seen some of that may be updated. There's a Michigan place that updates that to 1.92 cars per single family home. Redwood has 1.5 cars per home. We have an average of 1.65 people per resident per apartment home. Excuse me. And then an average of 1.5 cars. And then we also, our residents tend to travel less at peak hours. Not everyone is retired. Obviously, there are people on either side of that 51, but because of the makeup of our neighborhood, we tend to travel less at peak hours. So our traffic impacts, while they're not negligible, tend to not impact an existing service area. As Lance mentioned, we will be required to do a traffic study, so all that will be borne out, and that will direct how we operate in terms of traffic improvements. Oh, so this is the great part. This is the fun part, the pictures. So these are the pictures of the exteriors. As I mentioned, we look like a single-family ranch condominium. If you go look at, if you see our neighborhoods. We have some traditional architecture designs where we tweaked them a little for Lockport. So what you see in the elevations that were part of our submittal don't look like our typical elevations, but that's okay. I think they're pretty. We have stone shake siding accents. We've done some board and batten accents. Individual driveways, we've got upgraded garage doors, so all the garage doors have windows in them. They're not just blank garage door space. Personal patios, as I mentioned, everything's designed for mobility and accessibility, including the neighborhood. So if you live here in the neighborhood, you can go here. If you are in a wheelchair or otherwise able, there's always a way for you to get anywhere in the neighborhood. We're also very low density. I think here we're a little shy of 5.5 units per acre. Traditionally, when you think of apartments and you think vertical, you can get 18, 20, 23 units per acre, but we are 1,200 to 1,600 square feet, plus a garage, plus a driveway, plus the patio, so we chew up a lot of land. So our density is actually much less than you would see with traditional apartment homes. Here are just some more pictures. You can see some of the shake accents that we do. You can see a streetscape there, some of the stone accents on the high-profile side elevations, and then some of our front porch units there. And then inside, as you can see, the interior finishes have definitely upgraded since 2015. Large open spaces there, big ceilings, lots of light. We redesigned one of the end units a couple of years ago with an extra window so we can get even more light in there. No one living above and below you, sometimes not even on one side of you. Big eating kitchens, big bathrooms, everything's ADA accessible inside. Plank flooring, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances. Really nice, and you can see some more pictures here. Again, lots of light and the plank flooring. You can see a little peek in the bathroom in the bottom picture. These are just some pictures of our floor plans. The one on the left is our sunroom unit. You see the little sunroom on the side there, and then this one over here is our forest wood unit. That is our sort of our bread and butter unit, the one we have the most of on the site. And then our Willowwood unit, which is kind of the wider unit you'll see on the floor plan, and our Haydenwood unit over on the right, which has the front porch. Okay, so now we're gonna get into a little bit of the site. Here we go. Here's the property here. Here's all Broken Arrow over here, and here is Lago Vista over here. The horse farm's down here, and we have a neighbor to the north here, and right here is the storm pond for Broken Arrow. So before I get into the site itself, I just want to say that I acknowledge that we have an obligation through our annexation agreement to help with the storm condition, the stormwater pond condition on Broken Arrow. The annexation agreement requires us to put a 36-inch culvert in there. We're actually working with the engineering team right now because we understand there's an obligation to do that, but I want to make sure before we do that, I just don't want to check the box. I want to make sure we're helping to solve a problem. So we don't know what that's going to look like yet, but we are working with the engineering team on that. When we met with the neighbors last week, our engineer, Kevin Serafin, from Some Counties here, if you have any questions, he spent a lot of time with them getting some personal information, or some personal anecdotal information about what the storm was like over there, and that will inform our solution going forward. Site's about 30 acres. That's a little closer in there. This is a subdivision map. I think I got a little crazy with the maps, but it gives you a little easier view of how you can pull out Broken Arrow versus our prospective neighborhood, and then Lago Vista over here. This is the zoning map. Everyone around us is R1. We are going to drop our units per building to 4 per building, so we'll stay the existing zoning R2, which flows nicely in here and is, as I mentioned, consistent with the existing zoning. So here's the site plan that we submitted. Just a couple of fun things about it, or interesting things. This is a drain area, wetland area up here. We're staying out of that. We got our main access down here by Broken Arrow. The curb cut lines up with the existing Broken Arrow curb cut on Farrell at the city's request. We've got a secondary access up here. This will be emergency access only. We might do like a grass create or a bollard, whatever solution works for the fire department and the planning department, so that we have adequate access for fire, but are not encouraging the second curb cut travel on Farrell. This area over here is the area for the park that we worked at, and then Lance talked about the bike path around the perimeter. We've got storm ponds here and here. My understanding through both talking with staff and then with our neighbors at Lago Vista is that there is currently some drainage issues coming from this side of the property. Kevin and I actually walked the property today with one of our prospective neighbors to get a better, like a muddy boots view of the situation. So right now there's a lot of overland flow going over here. We are definitely going to help that problem. We're not going to solve everyone's problem, particularly south of us, but we're going to keep the property, the water from running off. It's going to be detained and released at a much more reasonable rate and underground. Oh, and that is all. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them or turn the floor over to the public for comments.
Public comment now?
Yeah, sure. So anyone who wants to
Anyone from the
give a public
here to
comment, if you could step up to the podium?
Step up to the podium and make some comments. State your name.
And again, if someone's already making the same statement before you, we don't want to be repetitive. And then I'll start with you.
Sandy Molesky.
Mm-hmm.
How do you spell your last name?
M-O-L-E-S-K-I.
And although you're not required to give your address, but just a point of where you are with the
Sure.
site, if you could
Yes,
give your
I own
address.
the equine assisted therapy facility to the south of the property, so 2705 South Farrell Road.
Okay.
Swear in.
Oh, yes. Raise your right hand. Sorry. Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Great, thank you guys for having us today. I did attend the neighborhood meeting last week, so this is really the second time I think I've seen most of this. I did have a couple of things that I had want to just clarify, last week we were told they were between 1,200 and 2,000 square feet with the garage and the patio. Today we heard two different things, 1,200 to 1,600 square feet, and then in the presentation it said 1,100 to 1,800. So I wasn't sure what exactly the square footage were of each of these units, so that was one thing just to clarify. A couple things as well that we heard at the neighborhood meeting that I had some questions and concerns about. I don't know if everybody knows, but I own the Legacy Ranch, which is an equine-assisted therapy facility where we work with children and adults with special needs. We are the property directly south. A couple of concerns that came up. One is at the neighborhood meeting, they indicated they'd be putting a bike path around the perimeter of the property, which would butt up directly against my property on the south. My concerns with that is safety of our population that we see here, as well as the horses. Having moving vehicles, although bipedal, can be very distracting and concerning to our special needs clients, as well as the horses, and can cause some safety issues for them. It's also a privacy concern, as we do mental health therapy there as well. So a lot of concerns from that perspective. I also have concerns, as I know a lot of people do, about the traffic patterns. Because all of the traffic is going to be heading out on our side of that property and across from Broken Arrow, I was told at the neighborhood meeting that they will allow up to 5 inhabitants per unit. So what that tells me is with 160 units, we could have anywhere between 320 and up to 800 cars, if there are 5 adults per unit, running down Farrell Road that come directly out. My situation's a little different. Obviously, we work with the special needs community. We do have runners. I'm very concerned about their safety if any of them were to run that way with that much traffic. I'm very concerned about safety there, and as well as from the high school, et cetera. I did some research between last week and this week, and Redwood was not aware that there was a facility next to them, an equine assisted therapy facility, so I made them aware of that last week. But I also was concerned that Highland Ridge is the other rental unit that just went up in Lockport in the last year. So I called them and found out they are at a similar price point, a little higher, arguably more amenities, certainly nicer amenities as well. They are at a 15% occupancy right now. So my concern is if we can't fill those rental units that are at similar price point as well as at nicer amenities, how are we going to be able to fill these? So if they sit empty, what happens? I know they've indicated that they will not do Section 8, but if they can't rent them at the, what I was told, $1,400 to $2,000 a month in rent, I guess we could confirm that as well. If they can't rent them at that rate, what happens? Do they then go ahead and apply for Section 8, and how does that work at that point? Additionally, even without applying for Section 8, if we're looking at the lower end of that rental at $1,400 a month, if they're allowing 5 residents, so whether that's multiple generational families, whether that's 5 adults, that works out to $280 a month per resident in those units. That certainly qualifies as low income, and I think that's a concern from a safety perspective as well as a property value perspective for the residents that surround that. That's all I have.
Again, I believe the Chairman Pro Tem stated, please refrain from clapping, disrupting, talking while a speaker is speaking. So
The
again,
purpose of this meeting is to conduct the city's business, and you've got the right to be here, but you don't have the right to disrupt our proceedings. We'd like to proceed in a common, orderly fashion. Sir?
Peter Maloney, M-A-L-O-N-E-Y. I live at 2509 Farrell Road. My property is directly... Yes. My property is directly north of the proposed property, and I've got a few concerns. One, right now where they're putting the detention pond on the northwest corner, you can just about see my house in the woods right there. Right now, all of that area right there is woods and trees and brush, all the way basically up to Farrell Road. Excuse me. I'm concerned that all that's going to be removed and be replaced with a bike path that's going to look right in on my house. The other concern I have is the drainage issue. Right now, my land is being flooded every day. So every time they put the pump on, the water comes on my property, it washes all the dirt through the gorge, and it all sits on my property. So I have to constantly clean that out. One other thing is, when the previous subdivision was approved, it was approved for 140 homes, and this is for 160. So those are my concerns. One other thing, I don't see any sidewalks in front of a lot of these buildings. It might be nice to put the sidewalks in instead of bike paths right around my house. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
Timothy Tunney, T-U-N-N-E-Y, Broken Arrow resident.
Okay, if you could raise your, okay, thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do. Traffic was aptly described. That was one of my points as well. If I could add to that, if in the future it's identified that the traffic is a problem, which it's already a problem, trying to get out of Broken Arrow on a Monday morning or a Friday night, Saturdays are just as bad. If it is determined that the additional 160 residences and their traffic is in fact contributing and making it worse, there's been no talk of any sort of traffic control, either the minimum of a stop sign or perhaps a traffic light. Were that to come up in the future, well, where's that going to be paid for? And that's going to be paid for more taxes. So in a way, that would raise our taxes. And so it is concerned because it is difficult to get out, and I certainly don't want to see any safety issues. I did say I would not go too far on that because it's already been talked about. The public services impact, I had heard that the fire department has no comment or has no issues on that.
They had no comment at this time, but they will certainly be reviewing it during the preliminary plan once we get into much more detail.
Because with that many more houses, I mean, Broken Arrow across the way is 320 homes, not counting the townhomes. So in a 30-acre lot, you're putting in half the homes. I think there is issue there. I think there's concern. And especially if we have to find ourselves adding another firehouse to accommodate that along with the other zonings that you are considering. So that would mean that the tax referendum that is being currently considered for this election, well, that would mean more. And it's very difficult, as we all know, to pass further tax increases on our homes. So that would be a concern. One access road, oh, sorry, that was traffic, apologies. Obviously, police services would also face additional burdens. We've talked a little bit about rainwater. Not much has been said other than the offering of help for my neighbors that live at the retention pond at Broken Arrow, which has always been a real problem. I would hope that that is considered greatly, along with, and I didn't know that he was being flooded across the street from that pump. Thank you for telling me that. I wasn't aware of that. That I'd like to emphasize for him. One thing that I didn't hear is water itself, drinking water, potable water. How is our aquifer? We only dig shallow wells. We have radon. We have concerns about the water. Summer's coming. Summer means higher water rates. What impact will this development have on those? What impact will it have on further water supplies? I don't hear anything talked about that. To me, that is a big concern. We need that kind of water. So far, we don't do too badly in the summertime with the higher demand of water and of homes watering their lawns. But the pressure does drop a little. Will the pressure drop more? Will our current infrastructure be able to handle that sort of demand, along with the other zoning areas you're considering? So I would hope that that would be part of your concerns. And I have nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Delmar McCucci, Lockport resident, Broken Arrow. M-I-C-U-C-C-I.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
M-I-C-U-C-C-I.
And would you raise your right hand?
I have
Would
great
you,
concerns
sir,
about...
oh, sir, before you start, okay, thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
I have great concerns when you say you're gonna put 160 units in that area and say you're gonna only have 11 students come out of there. That's very hard to believe. You're putting 160 units in an area that's gonna house a school system that holds 320 kids right now, and you're gonna add 200 kids. You're not gonna add 10 children out of 100 people. That's ridiculous to say that. You're gonna have 160 families in there. That's gonna bring at least 80 children right there. Just one apiece on half. So that's a great amount of children that's gonna be burdening the school system. And who's gonna take that on? So that's my great concern about that. I feel you should have homes going in there, not a rental unit in the middle of subdivisions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Maureen Maloney, and I just live north of the property. One of my concerns is that...
If you could raise your right hand.
Oh, sorry.
Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
One of my concerns is a lot of our neighbors here weren't even at the first meeting because they didn't know. I guess the rule is you only let people know who are about 250 feet away or something like that. This affects a lot more people than that. And because of a grassroots effort, that's why most of these people are here. A lot of people do not know about this and should be aware. I'm a little confused about last week's meeting. I thought that the rent started at $1,400, but this week I heard $2,100. Again, with the amount of kids, Redwood has never participated in Section 8 program across their 70 neighborhoods. Their typical age is 51 years old. They typically only generate about 11 school-age children. You know, just because this is typical and averages in other communities, does that mean it's gonna be the same for Lockport? These are just averages, and we need to understand that. Typically, again, 70% of their renters are empty nesters. Does that mean that's what it's gonna be for sure here? We're gonna base it on averages from other states, other communities? I don't know if we really wanna bank on that. We are told that it's gonna stay in R2, not in R3. You're not gonna have to change that because now instead of doing the 6 units, you guys have kind of made them do 4 units. That means nothing to any of us. It's still gonna be 160 units. So who cares if it's in 4 buildings or 6? There's 160 units. And also I wanna say there's beautiful trees on that property to the north, back end corner up here. We were told they're gonna all be taken down. When the proposal was approved in 2004 for 140 townhouses, that was gonna be for a retirement community, those trees were not gonna be taken down. Those trees have probably been there for 100 years. They're beautiful. I don't think we need to come in and destroy the trees. It doesn't make any sense. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next person.
Hello. I'm Kathleen Shore. I live in Broken Arrow. It's S-C-H-O-R-E.
Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I will. I'm known to the committee, I'm one of the houses that floods in Broken Arrow, so we were at the meeting last week at Misswood. A lot of this has been addressed already, the traffic issue, the flooding issue. Couple things. They mentioned tonight that the lease is a year, but what we were told at the meeting last week that they have short leases. And it was not ever clarified what those short leases are. So we're concerned about transient residents. Is a lease 1 month? Is it 3 months? You have people coming in and out a lot, and that's not really good. I know that they said that the average is 3 years. I would like some clarification on that, because tonight we heard that the leases were a year. What also wasn't mentioned was that even though they do credit checks and that kind of thing, was that the credit score required, I think, by FHA was 550. People who have 550 credit scores probably don't qualify for mortgages. That's not very high. We're concerned about that. What else we're concerned about is Broken Arrow is up for sale. I know that it's not related to this, but there is talk that if they sell that property, that they might put in additional townhomes. Again, the traffic issue coming out of Broken Arrow, which is a disaster already, then we're gonna have it met up on that side with a new subdivision, and then possibly in the not too distant future, we're gonna have more townhomes coming out of Broken Arrow if that property does sell. It is currently listed, I believe, for $10 million. It says that the property can be broken up and townhomes are being considered there as well. I know that they're separate issues, but we as a community need to look at that as a whole, and not just in pieces, because those things are going to impact Broken Arrow a lot, as well as our community and our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else care to make some comments that haven't been made previously?
Hi, so my name is Laura Davy, and I live in Broken Arrow, and
Yeah, if you could spell your last name again?
I'm sorry, D-A-V-I,
First name? Sorry.
is Laura, L-A-U-R-A.
And do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I sure do. So I don't want to bring up what they've already talked about, but honestly, traffic is a humongous problem. But I just want to say one small comment, and that is, I moved here from Oak Lawn. And the reason why I moved here was because this was a small town community. Everybody, there was, it wasn't like every second of every street, there was somebody who lived there. There wasn't property. It was like, kind of like country living without actually living in the country. And now, we are becoming like, every time we turn around, it's more this and this. And it's not benefiting us tax-wise, because our taxes are still going up. So I don't see the point of, our schools are already so overcrowded. And I just don't get the point of why we are doing this to a city that is supposed to be a small town, kind of like a small town city. And that is my biggest concern, is that I think it's just hurting. I think people thought of Lockport as one way, and now we're becoming like the second Orland Park. And I don't want to live in Orland Park. I want to live in Lockport. And that's my biggest point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Kelly, would you care to step up and respond to some of these concerns?
Yes, thank you. And I'm just going to handle the concerns in the order in which they came up. The square footage of our units is between 1,200 and 1,600 square feet, depending on the unit that you're looking at. Some of the discrepancy might have been in net square footage versus gross square footage. That is my fault for not clarifying. Our architect is here. He can tell you we're 1,200 to 1,600 square feet. We talked a little bit at the meeting about some changes that might have occurred, that would occur to the site plan. When we submitted our site plan, it didn't look like this because we didn't have comments back. So there are some things on this plan that look different than what I presented at the meeting. And I clarified at the meeting, this is not what you're going to see if you come to the meeting next week, because staff's asked us to make some changes. And I had talked about in that process of the next round of changes, perhaps moving the bike path to the behind the buildings up there, just because it makes a longer driveway. We're certainly open to discussion on where that bike path goes. That's not something that we're married to. We just want to make a nice neighborhood with a functional amenity. We talked a little bit about the concern about traffic came up in the number of people in a home versus number of cars in an apartment home. So because we have 2 bedrooms, FHA requires us to allow 2 people to live in each bedroom. And then if you look back at the interior floor plan, you can see you come in, there's the kitchen, then the living room, and then there's like a den off the patio in the back. Because that den has some wall separation, FHA requires us to allow 1 person to live there if someone would like to. So each apartment home can house 5 people if they're over 18, all of whom are on the lease, and all go through the approval criteria. But across our portfolio, 70 communities and 13,000 units, we average 1.65 unit people per apartment home. So we're not a flop house. We're not a frat house, a fraternity or sorority house. We are an empty nester age-in-place solution. And with those 1.65 people, the average cars per unit across our portfolio is 1.5. So it's not, is it possible there could be 5 times 160 times 2 cars? It is possible. There is no apartment neighborhood that we have ever built that looks anything like that. There was some concern about Highland Ridge, and if Highland Ridge isn't thriving, how can we thrive? So there are a couple of differences between Redwood and Highland Ridge. First of all, Highland Ridge is a garden story, 3-story apartment, so they're looking at something different than we are. They're more of what you think of as a typical apartment building. They also have 1 bedroom, 1 bath unit starting at 804 square feet, and 2 bedroom, 2 bath units around 1317 square feet. They're charging $1,582 for the studios and up to $2,345 for the 2 bedrooms. They don't have attached garages. They're not single story. They do have a community center, that's true. Their rents for their square footage are about $1.96 a square foot for the studio and $1.78 a square foot for the 2 bedroom, 2 bath. Their units are smaller than ours. We're looking to charge an average of $1.60 a square foot. So we are much less expensive with an attached garage and single floor living, both of which when we're doing our rents, a little thing about our rent comps, nobody looks like us. Nobody builds what we build. So when we go to look at rent comps, we have devised a structure internally to understand how can we compare what we're offering to what other people are renting, and how do we decide what that rent is so we can run a financial model and see if something works. So if someplace else has a community center, we take a little bit off our base rent. If nobody has an attached garage, we give ourselves credit for having an attached garage. If nobody's single story, we give ourselves credit for single story, because those are things that the market values. So I can't comment on Highland Square's market study, market practices. All I can say is that they are smaller than us, they are different than us, they target a different resident than us, and they are much more expensive than we are. There was a question raised about Section 8 housing. We do not do Section 8 housing. There's nothing wrong with Section 8 housing. It provides a housing solution for people who need it. That is not our business practice. We've been in business building our own stuff since 2003. We own it all. Everything is market rate. Our oldest apartments are market rate. Our newest apartments are market rate. There was some concern about buffering. So this is very preliminary, obviously. Our neighbor to the north here is concerned about the trees. There is going to be an existing tree line on his property that obviously we're not going to touch. I don't know what the dimensions of that are. We're certainly open to talking about bowing out the path and putting in some additional trees there. We have no problem doing some additional buffering for him. We actually offered our neighbors here at Lago Vista additional landscaping. This is additional landscaping here, not only deciduous and evergreen trees, but some shrubbery to maybe prohibit some pedestrian access, although our residents, as I mentioned, are 50 and not as prone to trespassing as maybe a 15-year-old might be. We also, we're open to some solutions here. It's early in the process. We're very collaborative. We met with the residents last week. We weren't required to. I was on site today with residents today. Our goal is to be a good neighbor. We're going to be here, and we want to make a nice community that works, and hopefully everyone can be comfortable with once it's built. Someone asked a question about sidewalks. There is a sidewalk path through here. It's kind of harder to see. It was easier to see on land since it's got that great pop. So in addition to the bike rack, there are pedestrian sidewalks throughout the neighborhood as well. And then the lease term came up. The average lease we have is 1 year. The great propensity of our leases are 1 year. The greatest number of them are 1 year. We do have short-term leases. It's not a secret. If someone is waiting for their house to be built and they need a place to live for 6 months, and you meet our rental requirements, we will probably work with you. But that is not the majority of what we do. The majority of what we do is a 1-year lease. People tend to stay for 3 years. It's not a 3-year lease, but they tend to stay for 3 years. And as I mentioned, it's not unusual to have people stay more than 5. And rents. So our rents are going to be about average on $1.60 a square, so they'll be a little underneath it for the smaller units and a little over it for the premium units. It's going to come out to an average between $2,100 and $2,300 a month. So, and I think that was about everything that we can answer at this point. Questions about water and sewer capacity. We have some initial discussions with engineering, so we think that's there. We'll get further understanding of that as we go forward. We'll continue to work towards solutions for storm for both our neighbors on the west and the east, and as we go through the process. So.
Okay, I assume you've done considerable market research that indicates to you that this proposal will be successful?
Yes. So before we even put a shovel in the ground, we generally we will not buy the property till we have all our permits in place. Our ideal situation is you buy the property, record the mortgage, put a shovel in the ground the next day. All that engineering, all that permitting, all that initial information, all that initial due diligence all comes up front. We generally pay around $300,000 on average to get to that point. Before we invest that much in a neighborhood we're going to build and maintain in perpetuity, we do considerable research. We have population markers, we have income markers, we have age of home markers, we have soft markers like road access, grocery store access, things like that. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. We have to pass 3 internal committee reviews, 2 to get to the point I'm with you now, and then 1 more as we get further down the road, just to make sure all our bells are still in line. And so there's an extensive process involving more internal stakeholders and then external research as well.
And again, with the students, this being primarily empty nesters, you're anticipating approximately 8 elementary school students and approximately 4 high school students?
We don't break it up like that.
Oh, something like that.
We don't break it up like that. So, again, this is a market study this is our internal data from 13,000 units and 16 years of building neighborhoods. No matter where we go, whether we're in an A school district or a school district that is presenting some challenges, we tend to generate 11 students per 100 apartment homes. That's the average across our portfolio. And it's pretty consistent average. It's not like there's wild swings. It tends to group around there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Handel, questions or concerns?
Yeah, like they've spoken tonight, the main concern I have is the drainage issue. I've been out on the property this week. Grew up for 40 years in that area, still live in that area. And the slope of that field that comes from east to west does come down towards Mendota on Lago Vista. So that is a huge concern of mine, that whole area. And you've already talked about the drainage issues with Broken Arrow. So my main issue is that the drainage issues be addressed, and I think you've done that, but I want to really make sure with that. I've operated 3 golf courses, and I know how important drainage is and what happens when it doesn't work. So I'm very well versed on that. The other thing is, if this does get built, The maintenance of the streets and landscape, that they would be contracted to provide uniform maintenance and uphold the aesthetic and monetary value of the development. I would hate to see a development that would look anything other than that, and I would not want that in Lockport either. And I'm really concerned with the drainage part, because I've 60-plus years I've been in Lockport, 20 years on Division Street, so when I grew up, Lago Vista was my playground, east of Farrell Road was my hunting ground, and behind Division Street was my half-mile dirt track. So when you guys talk about development coming, there was nobody east of Farrell Road, there was nobody south of Division Street, and there was nobody north of Division Street when I lived there, so all my playgrounds are gone. But at the same time, I always hear the residents saying that we want this and we want this, we want more restaurants, we want more sit-down restaurants, we want a theater, we want a hotel. So sometimes it's really hard, and I know this, balancing act is always challenging in this type of stuff. But commercial and residential, many times development goes hand in hand, and one doesn't happen with the other. So like you, I'm torn about, do I want to give up what I always had cornfields around me, and what I want in the future. I really enjoy going to Panera and some of the restaurants that I used to go to Joliet for before. So, guys, I know what you're saying, because all my stuff disappeared over the last 40 years, but there's some things I really enjoy that Lockport has done, and I like that hometown feel yet, and that there's open space yet. So I really feel what you're saying, but boy, there's no easy answers. There's a tough balancing act that we have to do. So, and remember tonight, Lance, I think, Lance, you said it 3 times already, that even if this concept plan is approved, it doesn't mean that this is gonna go through. This is a concept plan only. So, that's the issues I basically had. And one other thing, when I talked to the residents about the buffering along where the residences are, that's very important, that they have a buffer there. And if there are any trees that are savable, there are some really big trees that are still there. I would love a tree inventory or survey done, and not to be cutting down trees that are good trees. So I just wanted to share with you, you know what, it's not easy to make those decisions, but that's my viewpoint.
Mr. Shepherd, would you like us to address the concerns you raised, or just take them under consideration?
Would I what?
Would you like us to address the concerns you raised, or just take them under consideration?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to address a couple of them, and this is our engineer. He can talk a little more technically about the drainage. So in terms of landscape and road maintenance, we have, I'm happy to share our landscape and maintenance standards with the city. That's no problem. We're also, we're open to, when we amend the annexation agreement, we're happy to write some maintenance terms in there and things like that to give the city some additional insurances. Happy to do a tree survey. You're right, there are some trees out there. We were out there today that are quite large, and if we can save them, that would be great. And then, as I mentioned, we will work with the neighbors on buffering. Whether it's a intense landscape buffering or a fence, we would, of course, work with them to get them comfortable. So, and then Kevin can talk about drainage a little more, but don't forget to.
My name's Kevin Seraphin. I'm with Semcon Limited in Aurora.
Do you, spell your last name?
Serafin.
Okay, and do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
So we've been evaluating the stormwater issues on this site for probably 3 or 4 months by now. We've worked with your consultants and the village staff to get a really good understanding of what's going on both in the northeast corner and the southwest corner. And we did walk the site today with some of the residents in Lago Vista to get a better understanding of what they've experienced. And Mary Ann, she's here somewhere. She shared with us some pictures of what's been happening with the flooding, talked about the retaining wall in her backyard, the failures that have occurred because of the runoff from both this site and the site to the south of us. And we're going to continue to work with staff to make sure we address those issues. We've got about 15 acres of our site that's tributary to the southwest corner. of which we're probably going to reduce the peak runoff flows from that site down about 90%, and they will be going underground directly into the storm sewer system as opposed to overland where they go now. So we're going to do a lot towards helping that stormwater solution.
Thank you.
Do we know what the capacity is of Fairmont School? We're in Fairmont School District, correct? And
Correct.
What the capacity is and what the current enrollment is?
Yeah, I won't, I'll do a little speaking for the superintendent back there, but I won't, if I get this wrong, please tell me. What I understand is the capacity is about 350-ish. How many? Okay, so at about 350 students currently, capacity is double that, so.
Okay, thank you. As it relates to the building design, I would just ask that you look, I think you have a good start here. These are nice. The buildings or the homes that have been presented in the prior two cases, I think are of a detail that I appreciate, and I express that. And I think that if these buildings can have more masonry or stone, more architectural detail, I would like you to consider that. Please review the design standards for homes and where those homes would present themselves off of Farrell, or when we're coming into a development, if it's the backside of a house, that those are expressed in a better detail and better materials, so that those views are of, you know, the best quality that you can have. The roof pitches, it looks like 512. I think if there's opportunities to vary that, please consider it. Again, working with Lance and the team, they're very good and can help with those variations. Eliminating blank walls is important. Locations of condensing units even, especially those off of Farrell. And then the final item, where the horse therapy ranch is, please work with them, because that's a special place. And if there are things that we can do to not disrupt the therapy that goes on there, I think it's critically important.
Okay.
So, other issues, traffic and water, I'd leave that for future discussion, but thank you.
Thank you.
Number one with me is the traffic. I go by I'm down in Willowwalk, so I drive by the Broken Arrow entrance all the time, and there's always backups there. There's always issues coming out of there. And obviously, there's going to be a traffic light there. I would imagine it's going to be required. There's going to be a traffic study. I'm concerned about the Farrell Road capacity itself, with only 2 lanes, one each way, and you know, that's a big issue. And secondly, the infrastructure. We talked about local pressure in the summer. I get a lot less pressure in the summer, just like everybody in Broken Arrow does down the street. So I would imagine with the wells that we have right now, this land use was incorporated when we expanded our well system. I don't know if, I would imagine they included it. That's one thing. And the other infrastructure locally, I would imagine it was designed to, for the dwelling units per acre we were gonna have here, for the sanitary and the storm sewer as well. Just make sure that that capacity is not exceeded when this engineering is done for the next phase. The other thing is, like the other panel members have talked about, the impacts on the neighbors have to be treated sensitively. On the south end, there shouldn't be a trail probably along the property line. On the north end, if you have 100-year-old trees, maybe you can work with the resident, try to see if you can save some of them. The west frontage on Lago Vista, you said you've met with their residents on their stormwater problems, that's great. The pond on the east side of the street's a disaster. Please treat that accordingly and fix that issue. And that's about all I have. So just make sure you work with the residents and do a balancing act to make sure everybody's happy, because this is a big impact to our city.
Thank you. I'll take all that in consideration. Just because my words are under such scrutiny tonight, I just wanted to clarify, we met with one of our residents to the back, and then the sub-HOA president also joined us. So it wasn't a big resident group, it was a walk with a homeowner who asked me to walk with her, and the sub-association president.
That's always the best way to go.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Sweeter? Okay, all of my concerns have already been addressed, so I have no additional comments to make. Staff's recommendation is a motion to approve.
I had one more thing.
Sure.
How do you handle evictions? If you, let's say people go through the vetting process, which is pretty extensive, somebody gets in there and it turns out to be they become a bad seed, or there's misdemeanors, or they have UIs or whatever after they're moved in. How do you vet them through an eviction process? How long does that take? Is that something you have to do, you've had to do in the past, I would imagine?
I'm sure we've had to evict residents, over 13,000 apartment homes in 16 years. I'm sure we have evicted some residents. I don't know what that process is. I know it would be done in accordance with Illinois law. I'm happy to submit some specifics on what that process is, if that's helpful.
There's a process in
Yes.
place to handle that kind of
Yes.
stuff? Okay. Thank you.
And I would assume your lease agreement would have language that would address that.
Yes, everyone's subject to eviction. You can't just stay because you want to.
Okay, what is our pleasure?
This is just for the concept, right?
Correct.
Is it in the, Sunny, do you want to read it off?
Yeah, it would be a motion to recommend approval of the concept plan for the condition as outlined in the city staff.
And trying to incorporate some of the concerns of
Yeah.
the...
With the concerns that were addressed at today's meeting.
Okay, so moved then.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? A roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you.
This will go before the committee of the whole on April 1st.
1st, yes.
So,
He understood what I was trying to say. I didn't want to. They need heartfelt.
it's 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, I hate.
Yeah.
We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved. We didn't have a
No,
public hearing.
yeah, there's no public.
Motion
yeah,
and second to
so-
adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Huh?
Motion to adjourn.
Aye. Yes. Yep, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
Well, when they said